That was a message that could make my heart tremble. I drifted in a sea of tangled emotions, unable to surface, until a thunderous round of applause echoed through the bar. CC and Robin had just finished their second song, an encore demanded by the crowd. I tucked my phone back into my pocket and watched the voting results flash on the screen. Halfway through, I knew the night's title belonged to them. What they delivered was a high-caliber performance you rarely see in a place like this. I applauded with the rest of the audience, a sharp pang of envy in my chest. Robin and CC had more than just love between them. They had music. The way they just rearranged and blended Lyra's First Frost and Equinox was proof of it. The thought of finding that kind of spiritual connection with someone you love, of shedding the noise of the world and just getting lost in music, that was a kind of magic you couldn't buy. And then there was me and Micah. I was still caught in the vortex of reality, struggling to stay afloat, while she, crowned with a blinding light, basked in all the glory life had to offer. Maybe that was the root of our struggle all along. I was just a piece of driftwood floating next to her luxury yacht. How can we ever talk about being equals? When the voting was over, Robin and CC came back to our table. I gave them a thumbs up. That transition between the two songs was seamless. Brilliant arrangement. Robin, his cool, just as impenetrable as ever, just shrugged with a faint smile. CC, however, clapped me on the shoulder. Did Micah text you back? She did. What did she say? Can we have a little privacy, please? Oh, now you want privacy, she teased. Fine, I'll be a good person and let you two lovebirds have your moment. Be a good person. I like the sound of that, I shot back. CC's face fell. Leo, are you saying you think it's messed up that I care about you and Micah? I shook my head quickly, signaling that wasn't at all. Her tone softened into something more earnest. Look, I know there's a huge gap between you and Micah, but I don't think that's the real problem. As long as you two have each other in your hearts, then even if reality is a brick wall, you'll eventually turn it into a garden path. Her view seemed one-sided to me. Before that brick wall could ever become a garden path, Micah and I would have to stand on the razor's edge, weathering every storm thrown at us. Robin was right when he said love is a war. Not a war between me and Micah, but a war between two people from different worlds and the reality that separated them. As expected, Robin and CC's seamless duet won the bar's open mic night. The prize was the guitar, of course, plus a meaningless lifetime 50% discount on their tab. The second CC got her hands on the guitar, she gave it to me. I was thrilled. With this, I could play a few songs for my guests in my spare time. The three of us headed back to the motel around 11. Casey was still dutifully manning the front desk. I felt a little guilty. Hey, you could go get some rest. I'll watch the desk tonight. Casey grinned at me. It's cool. I was using the time to get our Airbnb page set up. Hey, Leo, come take a look. What do you think? I leaned over the computer screen. Looks great. He chuckled. So, when do you think business will pick up? I've been sitting here for over 3 hours and only got one guest. Probably wouldn't have even gotten him if I didn't give him a 30% discount. It's the dead of winter right now, I know. I'm working on a plan. We just have to get through this rough patch. Now go on, get some sleep. You'll need your energy to keep fighting tomorrow. Casey nodded. He said goodnight to CC and Robin, then shuffled off to his room. I sat down at the computer and turned to the other two. So, how do you want to do this? 1 room or 2? Robin answered almost instinctively. 2. I glanced at CC, surprised. I didn't realize they still weren't sharing a room. CC just smiled. 2 rooms is fine. I nodded, took their IDs to check them in, and said, you guys go on up and get some rest. I've still got some stuff to take care of. They both nodded and headed for the stairs, leaving me finally, blessedly alone. I lit a cigarette for company. After smoking half of it, I pulled my phone out again, rereading Micah's message over and over. An hour had passed since she sent it, but I finally replied. Remember when I said I wanted to take you to a river of happiness and swim all the way to the end? She must have been waiting because the reply was almost instant. Yes. Does the offer still stand? When I find that river, you bet it does. Then you'd better find it fast. I want to give my most beautiful years to you. My senses sharpened, my entire focus narrowing to that one little word. Give. It felt so heavy. I didn't dare let myself feel happy for too long because of it. I finished the other half of my cigarette, waiting a long time before replying. I'll do my best to find that river of happiness. Good. I hope that in the sky above that river, there's still that city you've been dreaming of. An image bloomed in my mind, a river of happiness, and floating above it, a city made of crystal. They called to each other from a distance, slowly dissolving into a brilliant rainbow that settled right into my heart. And I smiled. The night deepened. I lit another cigarette to break the loneliness and threw myself into the work of reinventing the motel. I scoured every travel website I could find, collecting reviews and comments from people who had visited Santa Fe. I had to understand what they wanted. In marketing, I firmly believed that understanding and satisfying customer needs was the foundation of any commercial success. As I browsed, one negative sentiment surfaced more than any other: tourists complaining about being ripped off by dishonest businesses, wasting money and ruining their trip. I started thinking in reverse. Using that as my starting point, I quickly distilled their core need. And just like that, a perfect trip package began to take shape in my mind. A storm broke in my head. My fingers flew across the keyboard, translating my thoughts into words. Time melted away, and before I knew it, it was 3 a.m. Staring at the freshly written plan, I let out a long, heavy breath. I had a feeling. I had a feeling that this perfect trip package was going to bring our motel back from the dead. In that instant, my heart was seized by an indescribable excitement, a wild rush. I was chasing the wind, chasing the dawn, chasing the rainbow after the rain. Exhausted, I walked down the second-floor hallway. As I passed Robin's room, I heard the sound of a TV and figured he'd fallen asleep. I used the spare key to open his door, planning to turn it off for him. But when the door swung open, I saw Robin sitting there, smoking, watching a concert recording. I was surprised. "It's after 3. How are you still awake?" Robin tapped the ash from his cigarette, his voice flat. "Habitual insomniac. Get some sleep," I said, yawning as I turned to leave. "Hey," he called out. "Hang out with your brother for a bit. Let me wash my face first." After a quick splash of water, I lay down on the other bed in Robin's room, took a sip of the chamomile tea from the nightstand, and asked, "What's up? Something on your mind?" Robin nodded and lit another cigarette. No one in the world knew Robin better than I did. I offered a gentle warning. "Look, man, I think since you chose to be with CC, you shouldn't be overthinking things." He shook his head. "I really don't want to hurt CC, but some things are carved into your bones. The sharpest knife can't scrape them out." I was quiet for a long moment before I asked, "Have you heard anything about her?" "No. The one thing in my life I've never dared to do is go looking for news about her." I could feel it then. Robin was trapped in a world of his own making, unable to move forward or back. But that knot in his heart had to be untied eventually. After another long silence, I finally said, "Why don't you tell me about her? I'll look for her for you. You have to get some closure, man. Life has to go on, right?" Robin didn't speak for a long time, but his expression was a mask of extreme conflict. "Tell me," I pressed. "Untie this knot, and you'll feel better. And it's a matter of respect for CC, too." A long, long time passed. Robin let out a heavy sigh, as if he'd finally made up his mind. "Vivian Marsh," he said, "NYU Steinhardt. Graduated from the education program, class of '09. Do you know her home address? She moved later on." "I'm not sure. Do you have any mutual friends?" Robin shook his head. "After I moved to Portland, I pretty much lost touch with all of them." He paused. "For all these years, I've been like an ostrich with its head in the sand, just telling myself over and over, I can't find her. If it were really that easy to find out about her, I probably would have done it myself by now." I understood his turmoil. With a silent sigh, I said, "Vivian Marsh, NYU Steinhardt, education, class of '09. I've got it. Just wait for my call." Robin nodded, finally letting his head fall back onto the pillow. But I wasn't sure if he was really resting. I turned off the light and lay there with my arms crossed behind my head, remembering a conversation Robin and I had a long time ago. He told me that to secure Vivian's happiness, he had slept with a prostitute right in front of her, just to completely extinguish any hope she had for him. It worked. She left him and went back to New York. It wasn't a complicated story, but thinking about it now still felt devastating. It was a story that held too much love and too much cruel helplessness. I was curious about what happened next. After Vivian returned to New York, did she follow her parents' plan and become a university professor? Or was there another ending? From my perspective, I didn't want another ending. The best possible outcome was that she had become a professor, found a man she loved, and they were living a happy life together. That would be the best closure for Robin. Otherwise, his heart-wrenching sacrifice would have been meaningless. The next day, the first thing I did when I woke up was send a text to Chloe. I gave her all the information I had on Vivian Marsh and asked if she could use her connections in New York to find her. With a name and a graduation record, I figured it wouldn't be too hard for someone with her network. After lunch with CC and Robin, they headed back to Portland. Robin wouldn't be returning to New York anytime soon. His work there was done. He and CC were staying in Portland to manage the Hollow City and the 5th season. It was for the best. For Robin, staying in Portland was much better than being in New York. That afternoon, the renovation crew showed up at our motel and started work on a few of the rooms. Casey was in charge of supervising while I took my perfect trip package proposal over to Finn's bar. It was still afternoon, so the bar hadn't opened yet. Finn and I were able to talk in a quiet corner. I handed him the proposal. Take a look at this and tell me if you think it's feasible. Finn took it from me, his curiosity piqued, and began to read it carefully. I sipped my beer and waited for his verdict. About 15 minutes later, Finn finished reading. He didn't give an immediate opinion, but instead asked me, "What's the basis for this plan of yours?" "Customer demand," I said. "Last night, I went through every major travel site in the country. A lot of tourists are really wary of the businesses in Santa Fe." Finn nodded in agreement. "It's a tourist town. You're always going to have some businesses that like to rip people off. It's unavoidable, but every tourist hopes for a perfect travel experience in Santa Fe. And that's where the conflict lies." Finn thought for a moment. "So, if we can solve that conflict, we'll have a unique business opportunity." I nodded. "Exactly. The customers can't solve this problem on their own, which gives businesses like ours a chance. My idea is to team up with a bunch of reputable businesses in town, package our respective services, food, lodging, shopping, and sell it as a single deal. The customer pays once and gets to enjoy a perfect, worry-free trip to Santa Fe. Think about it. People's lives are so fast-paced now. They come to Santa Fe to relax and have fun. If we offer a one-click service like this, aren't we catering directly to their needs? They won't have to worry about finding a place to stay or a bar to drink at. And more importantly, they won't have to worry about getting scammed." Makes sense. But just a few of our businesses can't meet all of a customer's needs. Take food, for instance. There are hundreds of little eateries in Santa Fe. Customers will want to try as many as they can. That's easy to solve. Anyone who buys our package gets a complimentary guide service. And the guides will be us, the staff from the participating businesses. First, it saves us on labor costs. Second, we all know Santa Fe inside and out. Besides showing them the sights, we can also give them solid advice on where to spend their money. That way, they don't have to worry about running into shady vendors. It solves their biggest concern in a real way. Finn sank into thought. After a moment, he clapped his hands together. When I imagine myself as a tourist, I'm completely sold on this perfect trip plan. Because it really is perfect, and it's so damn hassle-free. It was dusk by the time I left Finn's bar. As I walked, I thought about how the perfect trip package. The plan itself wasn't the hard part. The hard part was getting this personalized plan to the right tourists. And choosing the right platform to promote, it was crucial. It had to be free, but also effective. The most difficult sweet spot in marketing. Back at the motel, the renovation crew had already left for the day. They'd finished 2 rooms, and after a quick inspection, I was satisfied with the results. The sky darkened, but the sunset still lingered. Casey and I, as usual, were squatting under the willow tree across from the motel, eating from our takeout boxes. Casey seemed to have a million questions bottled up. "Hey, Leo," he asked between bites, "do you think Chloe will come back to Santa Fe?" "Hard to say." "What?" I was so excited when she was here that I completely forgot to get her autograph. It was a topic that held zero interest for me, so I didn't answer, just kept my head down and ate. Casey sighed again. "Man, this motel is just the 2 of us guys. Don't you think we've got too much masculine energy going on?" "What about the cleaning lady? Isn't she a woman?" "That doesn't count." "Leo, you're not getting any younger. Haven't you ever thought about finding a girlfriend?" "Yeah, I'm used. Why haven't I found a girlfriend?" "You should find a lady boss for our motel. Then we wouldn't have to eat takeout every day. Look at the Adobe song in next door. The owner has a beautiful girlfriend, and she keeps that place looking so fresh." I got lost in the picture Casey painted, unable to snap out of it for a long moment. I had to admit that was exactly what I longed for, a woman who could run this motel with me. I wasn't asking for a life of fireworks and fanfare, just one where the garden in my heart was thriving. Casey nudged me again. "Leo, what are you thinking about?" "About finding a woman like the one who runs the Adobe song." Hit. "Why didn't you get with Chloe? She's really good to you, after all." "She's good to me, but could she run a motel with us?" Casey shook his head. "No, she's a star." "What about that beautiful woman who drove the Cadillac?" "Ava." "Nope." "What about the goddess who drove the Q7?" "Nope. She wouldn't come here either." Casey sighed wistfully. "Man, they're all willing to come find you, but none of them are willing to stay with you. You're really lonely, aren't you?" "Yeah." "So," Casey concluded, "a man doesn't need the most beautiful or richest woman. He needs a woman who's willing to stick by him." That night, with business slow, I found myself standing outside the Adobe Song Inn for a long time. The owner's girlfriend was a young woman who could sing beautiful folk songs, and the owner accompanied her on a Spanish guitar. A group of guests sat on the second-floor balcony, sipping tea, chatting, and watching them perform. I wasn't a huge fan of folk music, but I listened for a long while, I think because I was envious. I could play the guitar, too. I was just missing a woman who would stick by me, a woman who would sing. Otherwise, business at our motel would be pretty good, too. Back in my own room, I showered and lay down in bed, but my mind was restless. 1,000 different thoughts, big and small, paraded through my head. I suddenly missed my time back in Indianapolis. I never had to eat takeout there. If the warden was in a good mood, he'd even pull out his prized aged bourbon and have a few drinks with me. And then there was Liz, a woman who would occasionally buy me clothes from a mall. They might have been on sale, but the style always suited me. That had been my life, my own days gone by. I could have kept living like that, but life made me choose a different path. And slowly, I strayed until I ended up here. My life now wasn't terrible, but just like Casey said, I was a little lonely. And I had a nagging uncertainty about the future. If I couldn't make this motel work, my life would just become a repeating cycle, and I didn't want that. I was getting older. I couldn't afford to keep going in circles. So I had to endure the hardships and make this place a success. At the very least, it would give me some security for the future. A week passed. The renovations were finally complete. But in the process, I'd blown through the entire $15,000 Chloe had left me, and then some. Now, the motel's daily expenses were being covered by the last of the $3,000 Casey got from selling his gaming account. Actually, it wasn't even that much anymore. Casey had spent over $600 on driving school. He really didn't need a license. I couldn't be the only one driving to pick up guests. It was noon again when the landlord showed up, a briefcase tucked under his arm. I quickly offered him a cigarette. He took a drag and said, "It's time to pay this year's rent. But doesn't the lease have another 2 months on it? My properties are all rented with a 2-month advance payment. If you don't pay, according to the contract, I have the right to rent the place to someone else, and you'll have to be out in 2 months." I understood immediately. The 2-month buffer was to protect him, to give him time to find a new tenant if we went under. For a landlord, that dead time was real money. "Look, we just finished renovations, and we're a little tight on cash. Can you give us a few more days? You're putting me in a tough spot. I can't go breaking the rules." I went to my room and grabbed a bottle of high-end tequila Chloe had left behind, handing it to him with an apologetic smile. "Why don't you take this? As for the rent, let me figure something out. I promise, you'll get every penny. How does that sound?" The landlord took the bottle, looked it over, and said, "This is some top-shelf stuff. If you can afford to drink this, what's a little rent money?" It was a gift from a friend. I could never afford this myself. He tucked the bottle into his briefcase and added, "Since you just finished renovating, I won't make things too hard on you. I'll give you 1 more week. Get it done quickly, and we'll both be better off, right?" I nodded frantically, promising I would. The landlord finally left, briefcase in hand. Casey groaned. "Leo, the annual rent is $15,000. We're so broke." I pulled a cigarette from the pack and lit it, cursing my own carelessness. I hadn't read the contract terms closely enough. Thinking I had 2 months, I hadn't set aside any money for the next year's rent. I took a long drag, my chest tight with frustration. After a long moment, I said to Casey, "I'll figure out the money. Are you going to ask Chloe?" I didn't answer right away. I really didn't want to ask Chloe for a second loan. Her money didn't grow on trees. And if she was going to live in New York permanently, she'd need a place of her own. I'd heard on some entertainment news show that a famous celebrity had worked for years and all the money they'd earned was just enough to buy an apartment on the Upper East Side. But besides Chloe, who else could I ask for $15,000? The spring evening breeze drifted over the Santa Fe River, painting the landscape in a golden hue. I sat alone on the motel's balcony, smoking, my mind consumed with how to solve the $15,000 rent problem. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts again and again, but I couldn't bring myself to call anyone. It wasn't an easy sum to ask for, and not everyone would treat me the way Chloe did. I put my phone back in my pocket and flicked the ash from my cigarette, feeling a wave of helplessness wash over me. I was adrift, but the problem wouldn't solve itself. The most beautiful thing in the world is when you're longing for a sign, hoping for a gust of wind, and she happens to walk by at that exact moment. But right now, there was no one like that in my world. I was so alone it felt like all that was left of me was my own shadow. I picked up my guitar, about to strum a song to clear my head, when my phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a message from Micah. She was asking if I'd had dinner. I texted back, "It's only 6 a.m. Over there, right? Why are you up so early?" She sent me a picture. She was in workout clothes, an armband for her phone strapped on. "Running?" "Yep. Spring is the perfect season for exercise." I smiled and texted back, "So even beautiful women have to work for it. If you didn't like working out, I bet your figure would go all sideways." Not necessarily. When work gets busy, I sometimes go weeks without exercising. Try going months and see what happens. The topic seemed to bore her because she changed it. How's the motel business going? It's going great. Keep it up. Will do. The morning air is perfect. You should go for your run. This time, Micah took a little longer to reply. Aren't you going to ask how I'm doing over here? I rubbed my nose, realizing that I always subconsciously assumed she was doing fine. She was a woman surrounded by a halo of light. Unless she encountered the deepest, darkest night, her proud light would never dim. So, she must be doing well. That had been my logic for a long time. I finally realized that hidden within me was an excuse, the assumption that she was always okay. So, how are you doing over there? It rained really hard in New York yesterday. A bunch of flowers on my hotel windowsill died. What does that have to do with how you're doing? It has everything to do with it. If I had remembered to bring them inside, they wouldn't have died. So you feel guilty and sad, and that means you're not doing well. Yes. Next time, remember to bring them in before it rains. Okay, our conversation ended there, but I understood. Beneath her dazzling halo was a delicate heart. A small thing could become a grand drama in her world, leaving her feeling lost and sad. She was, after all, just an ordinary woman. As the city lights began to glow, I deliberately went through each of the newly renovated rooms, mopping the floors and wiping down the furniture until I was exhausted and panting on the floor. In that state, my worries had no room to breathe. They all vanished from my world. Drifting off to sleep, my phone rang again. It was an unfamiliar number. I answered. A woman's voice said, "Excuse me, is this the owner of the motel?" The voice sounded incredibly familiar, but I couldn't quite place it. Yeah, that's me. I saw some pictures of your motel on a travel forum, and they look nice. I'd like to stay there. Sure, come on by. Our motel is a great value. I'm already at the bus station in Santa Fe. Could you please come pick me up? Of course. And your name is? My last name is Liz. Liz? You recognize me just like that? I was stunned. It's really you. What are you doing in Santa Fe? I'm on vacation and was trying to figure out where to go for a change of scenery. Your aunt told me you opened a motel in Santa Fe, so I thought I'd stop by and see it. Why isn't your phone number the same? I changed it a long time ago. I realized then that it had been a very long time since I contacted her. That's why the number was so unfamiliar. Just wait at the station for a bit. I'm on my way. Drive safely, Liz said. There's no rush. I agreed and hung up, a small, wry smile on my face. This little town of Santa Fe had condensed my entire life into a miniature drama. They came one after another, and they left one after another, a procession passing through my memory. No one ever truly stayed. This revolving door of faces was giving me a much deeper understanding of the word passerby. I drove the beat-up van left by the previous owner, Cole, to the bus station. A few minutes later, I arrived. Under the platform awning stood Liz, wearing a light blue denim jacket, her hair tied in a bun, and a pair of New Balance sneakers on her feet. The perfect picture of a traveler. I rolled down the window and gestured for her to get in. She smiled, opened the passenger door, and sat down beside me. On the way, I made small talk with her. I'm really surprised to see you in Santa Fe. Just passing through. I'm heading to San Diego in 2 days. I nodded, unable to find another topic. A brief silence fell between us. After a while, Liz spoke again. Leo, there's something else I need to tell you. I smiled. Let me guess, you found someone and your blind dating journey is finally over. Don't joke around. I'm serious. My expression turned serious. I waited for her to continue. Liz paused for a moment before looking at me. Your aunt doesn't seem to support you opening a motel in Santa Fe. She's been having your uncle try to arrange a job for you at his agency. The goal is to get you to settle down and live a stable life in Indianapolis. Is it a sure thing? Yeah, your aunt told my mom while they were playing mahjong at our house. They'll probably come to Santa Fe to see you in a few days. A bucket of cold water seemed to pour over my heart. The rent problem wasn't even solved, and now another complication had arrived. After a moment, I said, I've invested almost $30,000 in this motel. There's no way I can just give up halfway. I'm just the messenger. The final decision is up to you, but you have to be considerate of your aunt. After all, every parent hopes to have their kids around when they get old, right? I nodded. From my mom's perspective, her decision was perfectly reasonable. But for me, the idea of going back to Indianapolis felt like leftovers my mom kept reheating over and over again. After another long pause, Liz asked, what does your girlfriend think about you opening a motel in Santa Fe? I froze for a second, then remembered that when Micah and I had made things official in Indianapolis, Liz was one of the onlookers. In her eyes, Micah really was my girlfriend. But at this moment, I couldn't even figure out what my relationship with Micah was. There were too many unresolved things between us, making us feel like strangers who were somehow, slowly, getting closer. Finally, I said to Liz, I think she supports it. Liz nodded. From her demeanor, she doesn't seem like an ordinary person. Can you tell me what she does? There was no need to hide Micah's identity. I told Liz plainly. Have you heard of Aria Grande in Portland? I know it. It's the most high-end department store in the city, right? I nodded. Yeah. Aria Grande was founded by Micah's father. She's currently the CEO. Liz looked genuinely surprised. After a moment of silence, she asked, You must be under a lot of pressure, then? We're from two different worlds, so now you two are. I gave a helpless smile. We had a bit of falling out a while ago. She's in the U.S. now, and with the distance between us, I don't even know how to define our relationship. Liz nodded and didn't press further. In her silence, I sped up a little, and soon we were back at the motel. After we both got out of the van, Liz just stood there, staring at me. What's wrong? I asked, confused. It's been a while since you got your hair cut, hasn't it? I subconsciously ran a hand through it. It's not that long. A man has to have some spirit. Go get a cut. Tomorrow. I haven't even eaten yet. That's easy. I'll cook for you while you get a haircut. It'll be ready when you get back. You came all this way to Santa Fe, and I'm making you cook? I'd feel too bad. Just go. Liz urged, not taking no for an answer. I don't want the food to get cold waiting for you. Her insistence left me with no choice but to agree. I led her into the motel and introduced her to Casey. Then, the two of us left together and walked down the old streets of Santa Fe, her to buy groceries, me to find a barber shop. I quickly found a place that was still open. As I was about to go in, Liz grabbed my arm. She pulled a $20 bill from her wallet and handed it to me. Of the $200 I got from you, there's still $68 left. Are you really planning to pay me back like this? Yes. Taken from you. Used for you. Liz pressed the money into my hand. I took it with a strange feeling in my gut, hoping I would never have to use this fund again. Every time I did, it was when I was a low point in my life. I took the barber's suggestion and got a short, textured cut. It cost me $18, but it was worth it. I looked a lot more energetic. When I got back to the motel, Liz had already cooked several simple, home-style dishes and was chatting with Casey while waiting for me. I deliberately ran a hand through my hair in front of them, striking a flashy pose. Liz looked me over and nodded in approval. Not bad. The barber's skilled. I smoothed my hair down again and sat down next to them. Casey leaned in and whispered in my ear, Leo, of all the women who've come to visit, she's the only one who's actually cooked for you. I glanced at Liz, and that indescribable feeling washed over me again. It was true that compared to Ava, Micah, and Chloe, she was just an ordinary woman, but she was also the most real. Liz filled a bowl with rice and handed it to me, motioning for me to eat. I nodded, too hungry to even say thank you, and started wolfing down the food. Her home cooking really did make me feel like I was eating at home, without a trace of the aimless, drifting life I was leading. After dinner and washing the dishes, we took advantage of the rare downtime to sit on the small balcony, talking and catching up. Looking at the Santa Fe River across the street, Liz said, Leo, the atmosphere here is really nice. No wonder so many artsy types flock to Santa Fe to open motels like this. My reasons for opening a motel here have nothing to do with being artsy. Then what's it about? Money. I want to earn enough to improve my life. Have you earned it yet? I shook my head and habitually lit a cigarette. I was halfway through it, lost in thought when the power suddenly went out. I stood up and looked around. The entire street was dark, not just our motel. With no electricity, many of the guests had gathered by the river, floating candles on water. Watching the river dotted with points of light, I felt like I'd been transported back in time to an ancient lantern festival. I found some candles in glass holders in the storage room, lit them, and hung one on a post. The space between me and Liz was once again bathed in candlelight. Sitting back down, I relit the cigarette I had just extinguished. Where were we? I asked Liz. I asked if you made any money from this motel. You shook your head, and then the power went out. Perfect timing for the power to go out. Very fitting. How so? It's like my life right now. Can't see a speck of light. Liz glanced at the hanging candle. Isn't that light? I guess. It's just a little dim. Liz looked at me seriously. It sounds like you have really high hopes for this place, then. Because the light from this candle is clearly not enough to satisfy you. You're right. I want to turn this motel into a nationally known chain of scenic inns. It's good for a man to have dreams and ambitions. I support you. Thanks. Liz smiled. If I say I support you, it can't just be with words. There's moral support, too. Liz shook her head, not saying much, but pulled a bank card from her wallet and handed it to me. What are you giving me your card for? I heard from your friend Casey. You still haven't sorted out this year's $15,000 rent. There's $20,000 in this card. Take it and use it for now. I didn't reach for it. Where did you get so much money? My living expenses aren't high, so I've saved it up over time. I was planning to use it for a down payment on a house when I get married, but I don't need it for now. So you take it to get you through this emergency. No, I can't. I really can't. I can't take this money from you. I'm not lending it to you. I'm lending it to your dreams and ambitions. Liz, do you really think I can succeed in a place like this? As long as you have a dream and you're fighting for it, you've already succeeded halfway, and your hidden potential is the other half. So you will definitely succeed. Thank you. I really need to hear that right now. Liz smiled again and placed the bank card in my hand. It's getting late. I'm going to go get some rest. Wait, I called out, reaching out and grabbing the sleeve of her coat. The bank card, which I had been clutching, slipped silently from my hand and into her pocket. What's wrong? I don't know if the power will come back on tonight. You should take a candle back to your room for light. Liz left, carrying a single candle. I remained on the balcony, feeling no regret about refusing her $20,000 offer. I shouldn't have accepted her money. I really shouldn't have. The night grew deeper. The light from the candle dimmed, but in my heart, a fire had been lit, illuminating a world that had become gray. In the glow of that flame, I made a vow. No matter how hard it gets, I will keep this motel running, and I will make it a success. Because I could not betray the trust that came with her $20,000 offer. Leaning closer to the candle, I opened the glass and used the flame to light a cigarette, once again weighing who I could borrow the $15,000 from. I knew one thing for sure. If I couldn't borrow it soon, Liz would offer me her wedding fund again to solve my crisis. Half an hour after Liz left, the lights of Santa Fe flickered back to life. I blew out the candle, and the lingering smell of smoke in the air grew stronger. I sat back down in the lounge chair and pulled out my phone again. My finger hovered over Micah's name for a long time, but I still couldn't press it. The hesitation made me intensely anxious until I finally threw the phone onto the stone table beside me in frustration. I stared blankly at the neon-lit street, asking myself, why? In an age where everyone seems to be driving a Mercedes or a BMW, is my own attempt at a business so fraught with thorns and trouble? Did their success come too easily, or was I too naive, only seeing their polished surface? I was lost, but I didn't dare extinguish the flickering flame of my ambition. Pulled in two directions for the first time in my life, I could truly felt the agonizing difficulty of starting something on my own. The next afternoon, I saw Liz off at the bus station. She was transferring to a bus to Los Angeles, then flying to San Diego from there. We didn't exchange any grand farewells. She just asked for the $2 left over from the haircut money. So now I had $50 stored with her. Finally, we gave each other a quick, light hug and went our separate ways, back toward different worlds. Her world was about to be filled with the sea breeze, waves, and seafood of the Pacific. My world was still filled with the helplessness of being broke. So, I didn't go back to the motel. I got in that beat-up old van and drove straight to Portland. At this point, the only people who could help me with this kind of money were my friends in Portland. It was late afternoon by the time I arrived back in the city. The first person I contacted was Jenna, because she held the purse strings in their family. Asking her for money would be more effective than asking Ben. Around 4 o'clock, Jenna took a break from work to meet me at a coffee shop downtown. But this time, she didn't look as vibrant as she used to. She looked completely worn out. I handed her the coffee I'd ordered. Have you been busy with work lately? Jenna took a sip. It's fine. Same as always. What about you? Why are you suddenly back in Portland? I found it hard to bring up the topic of borrowing money, so I just smiled. I missed you. Came back to see you. Jenna just looked at me, without the usual teasing insult of you wish. I leaned in closer. I came all this way to see you. Can't you give me a smile? Leo, don't mess around. I'm not in the mood. I finally realized something was wrong. Did something happen? I asked, my voice tensing up. Jenna's eyes suddenly welled up. My heart tightened. I quickly handed her a napkin. She dabbed at the corners of her eyes, her voice choked with tears. Ben and I had a fight. He hasn't come home in a week. Since we got together, we've never been apart for this long. I was so surprised I almost blurted out. How could you two fight? He's been coming home really late recently. That day, I finally couldn't take it anymore and I yelled at him. He got angry too, and it just spiraled out of control. Then he moved out. I was silent for a long moment before I finally tried to console her. He's the marketing director at Aria Grand now. He's bound to be busy. You should try to be more understanding. He was busy when he was at Polaris Retail too, but it was rarely like this, coming home after midnight for weeks on end, reeking of alcohol. Leo, tell me, how many women could put up with that endlessly? Jenna started crying again. So you've been fighting for this long, and you didn't tell me? Are you trying to treat me like a stranger? You have your own things to deal with. Besides, it got so bad this time, I really didn't know how to tell any of you. No matter how bad it gets, life goes on. Don't overthink it. I'm going to find Ben right now. Some things, if you don't solve them quickly, they fester. Jenna nodded, her voice tinged with self-blame. Leo, was I being too inconsiderate? Sometimes I see how tired he is from work, and my heart aches for him. But when two people live together, there are bound to be bumps in the road. Understanding each other is the most important thing. Think of this fight as a learning process. Maybe once Ben calms down, he'll regret it too. Jenna didn't speak, just continued to cry. I asked her, in the days Ben's been gone, have you tried contacting him? Jenna shook her head. I don't think. This is my fault. I've also been working hard to support this family. I just really wish you would pay a little more attention to me. As she spoke, her expression grew distant and pained. She pressed her hands to her forehead and sobbed. Leo, I really want a baby, but I'm too scared to even bring it up with him. Isn't that just tragic for a woman? I gently patted Jenna's back, trying to help her catch her breath, but my own heart was growing heavier and heavier. Could it be that even the model couple, Jenna and Ben, couldn't escape the test of time? How long was one person willing to bend for another? After convincing Jenna to go home and rest, I got in my van and headed for Aria Grande. On the way, I called Ben. The phone rang until just before it went to voicemail. Then he finally picked up. I cut straight to the chase. I'm in Portland. You free now? Let's talk. Ben's reply was quick. Not today. I'm about to head to headquarters in Seattle for an emergency meeting. Ben, work is important, but you can't compare it to your wife and your family, can you? You know Jenna and I had a fight. Can you really hide fire with paper? I don't care how important your meeting is. If I don't see you in half an hour, don't ever call me brother again. I hung up furious. Then I lit a cigarette to calm myself down. I'd worked in a department store before. I knew how important an emergency meeting could be. So why was I being so unreasonable, threatening him with our friendship? Half a cigarette later, I finally understood. It was because Ben and Jenna represented the last hope of a college romance. They were the ideal I'd always aspired to. If even they fell apart, then that crystal city in the sky really didn't exist. I ordered beers at the barbecue joint we used to frequent in college and waited for Ben. The half hour passed quickly, but he didn't show. I grew even more furious. Just as I was about to pull out my phone to call him again, a black Land Rover pulled up to the curb. Nathan got out of the car. Leo, he called from a distance. Let's us two have a few drinks first. Ben will be here soon. I understood immediately. The half hour I'd given Ben was too demanding, but he really did care about being brothers, so he'd sent Nathan as a reinforcement to smooth things over. Nathan sat down across from me, poured me a beer, then one for himself. He raised his glass to me, a silent toast. I temporarily suppressed my emotions and clinked my glass against his. I couldn't even remember the last time the two of us had sat down for a drink, just the two of us. How many years had it been? But this reunion of two felt uncomfortable. I downed the beer in my glass and set it down hard. Ben and Jenna are fighting this badly. And you, being in Portland, didn't even try to mediate. You're really blaming the wrong guy. Ben just told me about their fight when he called me a few minutes ago. I nodded, raised my glass to Nathan again, and drank it in one go as an apology. He drank his in response, and then we fell into silence. There was nothing more to say. The wordlessness seemed to make Nathan uncomfortable, too. He pulled out a pack of American Spirits and tossed one to me. I caught it and lit it. The familiar, pungent smell filled the small barbecue joint, the only remaining trace of our college days. Through all the changes and drifting apart, our shared habit of smoking the same brand of cigarettes had remained stubbornly unchanged. After one cigarette and a few more beers, Ben's silver Audi A4 finally appeared. As soon as the car stopped, he hurried out. Ben sat down next to Nathan. I poured him a beer. He took it, drank in one gulp, and said, I had to get my assistant marketing director to go to the emergency meeting in Seattle, so I'm a little late. His explanation made me feel a bit guilty. After a moment of silence, I said, I know you're busy with work, but I really can't stand to see you and Jenna dragging this out. You can afford to wait, but Jenna can't. Ben refilled his glass and drained it in a single, frustrated gulp. I pressed on. Seriously, unless the relationship is completely broken, don't ever punish a woman by leaving home. For them, it's the cruelest form of revenge. Ben slammed his glass down. Didn't you also ditch Micah in Portland and run off to Santa Fe by yourself? I felt like I had just slapped myself across the face. After a long pause, I said, you two are legally married. How can you compare that to us? Besides, everyone knows I'm an unreliable piece of trash. You're comparing yourself to me, Ben. Aren't you lowering your standards? Ben shot me a look and down another beer. It was a long time before he spoke. Leo, don't you think I'm working myself to death for a reason? It's to give her and me a better life. I didn't grow up rich. I know what it's like to scrape by. The day I got my college acceptance letter, I swore to myself, I will never let my children go through the same miserable life I had. Ben was telling the truth. Before his senior year of high school, his dad's business ventures had all failed. It wasn't until he was in college that his dad finally opened a successful kitchen cabinet store back home and managed to improve their lives. But until then, Ben's life had been a constant struggle. After a moment of silence, I returned to the main point. Jenna said you've been coming home after midnight for weeks. Is the workload at a department store really that intense? Nathan chimed in. I can vouch for Ben on this one. He's been rushing to finish a marketing plan for the new wine and spirits boutique I'm opening in Aria Grande. I'm planning to launch in April, so the timeline is really tight. Ben looked at me, a hint of grievance in his voice. Leo, did you hear that? You tell me, should she be fighting with me over this? I ignored him and pressed on. Then explain why you sometimes come home reeking of alcohol. I'm a marketing director. Doesn't having a lot of business dinners mean the company values me? Who's giving you so many business dinners? If I remember correctly, your direct supervisor is Micah's cousin, Milan, right? Leo, don't let your mind go there. Milan and I are just colleagues. Besides, Micah recently transferred her to the Aria Grande in Boston to be the general manager of the new store. We literally have no opportunity to interact. I still looked at him with suspicion. Ben finally snapped. If you don't believe me, you can call Micah right now and ask her. See if Milan wasn't really transferred to Boston. This was something that couldn't be left ambiguous. Ignoring Ben's anger, I sent a message to Micah. The reply came back. Milan had indeed been transferred to the Aria Grande in Boston. In fact, Micah herself had personally handled the transfer before she left for New York. My doubts finally vanished. I let out a sigh of relief and raised my glass to Ben in apology. Nathan stepped in to smooth things over. Ben, don't hold this against Leo. He's just worried about Jenna. The most important thing now is to clear up this misunderstanding. I'll call Ava right now and have her bring Jenna over. You two need to talk this out properly and put this behind you, okay? Ben nodded. Nathan immediately pulled out his phone and called Ava. About 20 minutes later, Ava arrived with Jenna in tow. At first, Jenna was reluctant to sit with Ben, but she couldn't withstand our collective persuasion and finally sat down beside him. Ava naturally sat with Nathan, and I pulled up a separate stool and sat in the corner. Nathan and I each took a turn explaining Ben's recent situation to Jenna, hoping she would be more understanding. As her best friend, Ava then laid out how difficult things had been for Jenna, hoping Ben would be more considerate of her feelings. After everyone had spoken, Ben and Jenna just looked at each other, neither saying a word. I couldn't stand it anymore. I poured each of them a beer. You two drink this and go back to being a good husband and wife, okay? Nathan chimed in. Couples shouldn't hold grudges overnight. If you just understand each other a little more, you won't have all this unnecessary drama. Jenna finally burst into tears. Honey, I'm sorry. She sobbed. I should have understood how hard you've been working. I won't lose my temper with you again. Ben remained silent. Ava slammed her hand on the table. Ben, are you even a man? She raged. You abandoned your wife and home to live by yourself for over a week, and now she's apologizing to you, and you're still playing games? Nathan pulled the agitated Ava back in her seat, but she wouldn't back down, waiting indignantly for Ben's response. Ben lit a cigarette and took a long drag. The thing a man fears most isn't how hard he has to work, he said finally. It's his own wife not understanding him. I want to relax, too. I don't want to go to all those business dinners. The pain of having to drink when you don't want to. Have any of you ever felt that? Every time I drink until I throw up, until I'm completely exhausted, the only thing that keeps me going is the thought of Jenna and our family and the beautiful future I've imagined for us. The truth is, only I know how bitter it all is. Ben's heartfelt confession finally broke Jenna's composure. She threw her arms around him and sobbed, repeating I'm sorry over and over again, until Ben started crying too. And in the sound of their tears, the heavy weight in my chest finally lifted. I knew their misunderstanding had been resolved. That night, Ava drove a drunk Nathan home in her car, and Jenna drove their Audi A4 back to their home with him. And me? I was alone again. I parked that old, beat-up van outside the barbecue joint and found a small, cheap motel nearby. It wasn't until I was lying in bed that I remembered I had come to Portland to borrow money from Ben and Jenna. I thought about it for a moment and then abandoned the idea. I couldn't be sure if asking for $15,000 would put Jenna in a difficult position. And after what had happened today, I had a much clearer understanding of how hard Ben worked for his money. This wasn't the time to add to their troubles, not when they had just reconciled. With a soft sigh, I lit a cigarette, feeling even more lost than before. The 7-day deadline for the rent money loomed over me. In the middle of my deepening confusion, my phone suddenly vibrated. I grabbed it. It was a message from Micah. She asked, "Why were you suddenly asking me about Milan?" After a moment's thought, I texted Micah back, just curious. "You're still holding a grudge against her?" I didn't want to get into Ben and Jenna's domestic drama with Micah. To stop her from asking more questions, I decided to just go along with her assumption. "Yeah, I am. I didn't realize you were so petty. I am. Next time she mouths off to me, I'm throwing her in the river next to your family's mansion." Micah didn't reply for a long time. She was probably speechless, but at least I managed to shake off her questions. I took a long drag from my cigarette and exhaled a plume of smoke, trying to will it to break through the siege of the night, only to realize I hadn't even opened the window. The night remained thick and impenetrable, and the small, cramped room was now filled with a choking haze. I quickly stubbed out my cigarette and opened the window. A blast of cold air hit me, feeling like it was splitting me in two. I closed the window halfway, which felt a little better. I relit the half-smoked cigarette and went back to contemplating who I could possibly borrow the rent money from. I thought of Robin and CC. I knew if I asked, they would lend it to me without hesitation. But for that very reason, I couldn't ask them. For all I knew, they were already planning to buy a house in Portland. Feeling helpless, I started to get bored. I stubbed out the cigarette, then lit it again, then stubbed it out, repeating the cycle several times until time itself seemed to stretch out, long and slow. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, muttering things I didn't even understand myself, until the sound of a text message alert brought me back to reality. I rolled over and grabbed my phone from the nightstand. It wasn't from Micah. It was from Chloe. "Leo, are you asleep?" "Not yet. Did you find anything on Robin's ex-girlfriend?" "I've asked someone to look into it, but no news yet." "Oh." A moment later, Chloe texted again. "Can you come to New York right now?" "What's wrong?" "I have a fever. I feel awful." "Then you should go to the hospital." "I don't want to go anywhere by myself." I was in a bind. It was one thing during the day, but it was already 9:30 at night. Getting there would be a challenge. After a moment of hesitation, I checked for flights from Portland to New York. There was a red-eye at 11:30. If I moved fast, I could just make it. I grabbed the clothes I'd left by the bed and started getting dressed. In the middle of it, I got another text. I thought it was Chloe, but it was from Micah. "Get some rest. The motel is important, but don't get too tired." My hands froze. I was suddenly reminded of my unresolved relationship with Micah. Was it really appropriate for me to be rushing across the country for another woman? Another voice rose in my mind. If I really just see Chloe as a loyal friend, a sister, then why can't I go? Micah and I had always lacked trust and understanding. A sudden event like this was a test, for me and for her. If my conscience was clear, I should go to New York. This was the first time since she'd moved there that she had asked me to come take care of her when she was sick. Before, Robin had always been the one to do it. Chloe knew her limits. She wouldn't ask me unless it was absolutely necessary. On the other hand, if I had any romantic feelings for Chloe, then I shouldn't go because going might lead me to do something I shouldn't. With that thought, I stopped hesitating. I threw on my clothes as fast as I could, grabbed my bag, and headed downstairs. I drove at top speed to the airport, booked a ticket to New York, and boarded the plane 15 minutes later for the long flight across the country. At 1:30 in the morning, I finally arrived in New York. Even in the dead of night, the city that never sleeps was still humming. I easily hailed a cab and gave the driver the address Chloe had sent me. 20 minutes later, I was at Chloe's apartment. I rang the doorbell, and she opened the door, wrapped in a comforter. Both air conditioners in the room were blasting. The coffee table was covered in used tissues. She was clearly very sick. Chloe rubbed her nose, a hint of happiness in her voice. "Leo, I can't believe you actually came. I couldn't just let you die. You're such a drama queen." I touched her forehead. It was burning hot. She pushed my hand away. "It's so late. Besides you, I don't think it's appropriate for anyone else to come to my place." "What about your manager? Does he not care if you live or die?" "He's a man." I had always assumed her manager was a woman. The answer threw me for a loop. After a moment, I said, "You're all alone in New York. I think you should try to have a good relationship with your manager. He could help you out with things." Chloe sneezed again. "I've never treated him badly. He gets paid well for what he does." "That's not what I mean." "Then what do you mean?" "I should turn him into my boyfriend so he can legitimately live with me and take care of me at night." I smiled at her. "Why are your thoughts so scandalous?" "Am I? Or is that what you're thinking? Seriously? Okay, let's stop this. I'm taking you to the hospital." "I don't want to go. They'll give me a shot. It's not a big deal. I urged impatiently. Go find something warm to wear. Just because you're not afraid of needles doesn't mean no one else is. So you had me fly all the way to New York in the middle of the night just to chat. Chloe blinked, as if trying to figure out how to answer me. But my patience, worn thin by worry, had run out. I grabbed her, still wrapped in the comforter, dragged her out the door, and slammed it shut. You have a high fever. You need 4, no question. Do you have a car? I'll drive. I do. The keys are in my purse inside. Then give me your apartment key. I'll go get them. Chloe pointed at herself, giving me a look. I looked her over. She was wrapped in a comforter, wearing pajamas underneath. Not a single pocket. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. The apartment key is also inside. Chloe shot me a dirty look. What do you think? Rushing like you're trying to get yourself reincarnated. If you don't go to the hospital soon, you really will get reincarnated. Chloe, whatever. We'll take a cab. Chloe looked down at her comforter-wrapped body and glared at me. Leo, you bastard. Don't you know I have an image to maintain? Figure out a way to get my door open so I can go in and change. Who cares about your image? I said, hoisting the comforter-wrapped Chloe over my shoulder and marching toward the elevator. Once inside the elevator, I pressed the button for the ground floor and set Chloe down. I glanced at my watch. It was already 2 in the morning. Chloe leaned against the elevator wall. Leo, I just have a fever, but you still came all the way from Portland in the middle of the night. I'm really touched. I just shrugged. The red eye was on sale. Portland to New York, $111. And if there was no sale, you wouldn't have come? I'd come. You just have to reimburse me for the ticket. Chloe smiled, but didn't say anything more. I reached over and tightened the comforter around her. The elevator continued its descent, and I leaned back against the wall, my mind drifting. Perhaps to others, my rushing to New York in the dead of night for Chloe seemed absurd. But I didn't see it that way. There are some bonds that people who lack certain emotional connections can never understand. And I, Leo, I've always lived by my feelings, not by what's reasonable. Besides, on a subconscious level, the moment Chloe asked, I knew I had to come. Over the years, through our mutual care for one another, a bond akin to family had formed between us. My actions, then, should follow the lead of that hard-won affection. At an all-night urgent care clinic, Chloe lay on a bed with a 4 drip in her arm. I pulled the doctor aside. Doctor, I asked, a little confused. She gets fevers and cold a lot. What's the underlying issue? The fever is due to a high-intensity work schedule and irregular rest, which has weakened her immune system, the doctor explained. She needs to exercise more and pay attention to her diet. I nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. But then the doctor asked, does she have any history of major illnesses? I thought for a moment. I don't think so. Has she ever been exposed to severe cold in the past? A memory clicked into place. Back when Chloe was filming in less than a month after her abortion, she had to jump into a freezing river. A knot formed in my stomach. Can you guarantee strict patient confidentiality? I finally asked the doctor. We have a professional code of ethics. I finally told him. She had an abortion once. Less than a month after the procedure, she had to jump into a river for a film scene. And it was in early winter. The doctor's expression turned serious. Then her body has definitely suffered a major injury. Are you her family or her boyfriend? Family. Doctor, please just tell me straight. I'm getting scared. Don't be too alarmed. I'm just reminding you that you need to be very attentive to her daily life from now on. You can also try some warming herbal remedies to help restore her body's functions. I nodded and glanced over at Chloe, who had fallen asleep on the bed. My heart filled with sympathy. To the outside world, her path to stardom looked so smooth, but the sacrifices she made behind the scenes were unimaginable. After the 4 drip was finished, I helped Chloe up from the bed and put her shoes on for her. I looked out the window. A sliver of white was already visible on the eastern horizon. I asked for Chloe's opinion. Let's find a hotel and get some rest. We can have a locksmith open your door later, and then I'll take you back. My agent rented the apartment for me. He has a key card. We could just call him. Do you remember his number? Chloe nodded and held out her hand for my phone. I gave it to her, and she quickly dialed a number. A moment later, she handed the phone back to me with a small smile. We can go back now. I nodded, and we walked out of the clinic together. Back at Chloe's apartment building, I didn't go up with her right away. I waited downstairs for her call, worried about causing unnecessary trouble if her agent misunderstood the situation. About 15 minutes later, I saw a fashionably dressed man, who clearly had the air of someone in the entertainment industry, walk out of the elevator. He got into a black Mercedes and quickly disappeared from sight. At that exact moment, my phone rang. When I returned to Chloe's apartment, I boiled some water for her and watched her take her medicine. Only then did my heart finally settle. The sky outside brightened a little more. I checked the time. It was already 5 in the morning. So this is what dawn at 5 o'clock looked like. Spring was drawing to a close. I rubbed my face to wipe away some of the fatigue. You get some rest, I told Chloe. I'm heading back. You haven't slept all night. Sleep for a bit before you go. It's fine. I'll sleep on the plane. But Chloe was adamant that I not leave. I really didn't want to waste another day in New York. The rent deadline was getting closer and closer. The motel is really busy, I pleaded. Please don't make me stay. You said you didn't have any business. How busy can it be? It's because there's no business that I have to be even busier. Chloe's expression soured. All right, stop pretending. I know your motel has run into some trouble recently. Get some sleep first. When you wake up, I'll help you solve the problem. Did Casey tell you? Chloe nodded. If he was smart enough to get my number from your phone, why wouldn't he be smart enough to tell me? I was speechless for a moment, assuming that Casey, that little punk, had gone through my contacts without my knowledge. Chloe's tone softened. Leo, why didn't you tell me the motel was in trouble? I can't just keep asking you for money. You have your own life, too. Chloe smiled. I just landed a commercial endorsement. 7-figure salary. Her earning power made me feel inadequate. After a long pause, I said, if you're so capable, why don't you stop renting and go buy a place on the Upper East Side right now? Chloe looked at me, speechless. After another long pause, she retorted, why are you so stubborn? I stared at Chloe, and suddenly it all clicked. I pointed at her. Oh, you asked me to come to New York. Being sick was just a cover. This was the real reason, wasn't it? Chloe replied, half joking, half serious. If you hadn't come to New York, I wouldn't have brought up lending you the money. I'm not some rich idiot with money to burn. I still didn't respond. Leo, you can only earn another person's sincerity with your own. The fact that you would rush from Portland to New York in the middle of the night to take care of me, isn't that bond worth more than a measly $15,000? We've known each other for years. The first time we went out drinking at a bar and couldn't pay the bill, you and Robin covered it for me. Then you recommended me to your department store for that ad campaign, which helped me get through a tough time. Later, when I had the abortion, you were there with me. When the bar had problems, you were the one who stood in front of me, even though you had nothing. Chloe's voice choked with emotion, and she couldn't continue. It was a long time before I finally said, maybe over all these years, I've subconsciously started to see you as my own sister. Tears streamed down Chloe's face. I know. That's why the biggest regret of my life is letting you sleep with me after you got drunk. Chloe's tears threw my thoughts into chaos. My tongue felt clumsy in my mouth. I could only stare at her. Then, just as suddenly, Chloe's tears turned to laughter. Leo, she asked, don't you think my acting is getting more and more convincing? Even though I suspected she was messing with me, I couldn't bring myself to curse at her like I usually would. It was more likely that she was just trying to make things easier for me with a forced display of nonchalance. Your acting has improved, I finally said, but you need to take care of your body. If you really can't manage on your own, then hire a housekeeper or something. I'll think about it. I nodded. Rest for a while, Chloe said. You can leave in the afternoon, okay? I finally gave in. I lay down on the living room sofa, and Chloe brought a blanket from her room. Utterly exhausted, I fell asleep almost instantly. I slept until noon. When I woke up, the dining table was covered with food Chloe had ordered from a restaurant. After washing up in the bathroom, I sat down with her to eat. I had just picked up my chopsticks when Chloe handed me a bottle of yogurt. You were up all night. Drinking some yogurt before a meal is good for your stomach. I took it from her. I always thought you were so carefree. I didn't realize you were so thoughtful. Chloe glanced at me, her tone a bit cool. That's because you've never really tried to get to know me. Everyone has 2 sides. If you wanted to, you could have 8 sides. What's that supposed to mean? You studied acting? Isn't playing multiple personalities second nature to you? It is. But why is it that in front of you, I'm always just so carefree? I looked at Chloe's teasing smile and understood immediately. The way she acted around me was her most unguarded, most genuine self. It was something that could only be understood, not explained. So I just smiled back at her in response, picked up my bowl, and we both focused on eating without another word exchanged between us. After lunch, Chloe went to her room and came back with a bank card, which she handed to me. There's $20,000 in this card. Take it and use it for now. If the motel runs into trouble again, remember to tell me. $15,000 is enough. It doesn't hurt to have some cash on hand for emergencies. Chloe stuffed the card into my pocket. I was silent for a long moment, but in the end, I accepted the money. You take care of yourself here, too, I told her. The doctor recommended you get some herbal supplements to help you recover. I know. You take care of yourself, too. Don't work too hard. After a few simple goodbyes, I left her apartment with the bank card she had given me. The moment I boarded the plane, I suddenly felt like I had lost something in New York, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was. After landing in Seattle, I drove the van back to Santa Fe, arriving in the evening. As soon as I parked the van, I unbuckled my belt and walked into the motel, holding in my hand. Casey's face lit up when he saw me. "Leo, you're back." Crack! I slammed the leather belt onto the front desk. Casey yelped, covered his head, and dove under the desk. "Leo, why are you so violent?" he cried from his hiding spot. "You little brat, who told you could go through my phone?" "I just wanted to get in touch with Chloe." "Get up here." "No, if I get up, you'll definitely hit me." "I'm not going to hit you. Just get up here now." Casey peeked out from under the desk. Seeing that I wasn't moving, he finally crawled out, a sheepish grin on his face. "Leo, my bad. What were you wrong about? I went through your phone without your permission. Don't do it again. If you wanted Chloe's number, you could have just asked me for it." Hit. "Leo, you're such an upstanding guy. I knew I wouldn't find any compromising photos or anything scandalous. It's because I have absolute trust in you that I took the liberty of looking through your phone." "What the? You looked through my photo album?" "Yeah, took a quick peek." Casey trailed off, then suddenly exclaimed, "There are so many beautiful women in your photo album." I snatched the belt from the desk again. Casey yelped, covered his head, and bolted out the door, laughing hysterically as he ran. In a flash, he was gone. I fastened my belt again and sat down in the office chair, shaking my head with a helpless smile. I lit a cigarette, picked up my phone, and scrolled through the photo album. He was right. There were a lot of beautiful women. But the person with the most photos was still Micah. I remembered then that there was a time when I loved collecting pictures of her. After scrolling through them one by one, I placed the phone on the desk, and it suddenly occurred to me. Ever since Micah had gone to the States, I hadn't once initiated contact with her. She was always the one checking in on me. It used to be the other way around. I didn't know where the change came from, but it had definitely happened. I picked up my phone again, deciding to be the one to reach out for a change. I sent her a message. "Are you up yet?" A moment later, a reply came back. "Yep, just got up. About to go wash my face." "Wait, send me a picture of your face before you wash it. No makeup." Why such a strange request all of a sudden? I didn't answer directly, just urged her, "Hurry up and send it." Micah didn't argue. She told me to wait a moment. The truth was, I just wanted to see if there was ever a time when this woman wasn't beautiful. After all, no one looks better than when they've just rolled out of bed. 5 minutes later, a picture message came through. In the photo, her hair was a mess, and she was completely barefaced, but she projected a different kind of disheveled beauty. It annoyed me. Sometimes, I wish she were more ordinary. I texted back a deliberately mean reply. "So sloppy. Go wash your face." But Micah didn't complain about my insincerity. She just replied calmly, "Okay, talk to you in a bit." 20 minutes later, the evening lights had come on in Santa Fe, but New York was just beginning its day. So while I was slumped languidly in my office chair, Micah was energetically telling me she was going for a run. I asked, "Do you like to listen to music while you run?" "I do. When I run, I especially love listening to Dreams by the Cranberries. I love that song too." Suddenly, I missed the days when we used to sing together. "When you come back, we'll sing together." "Okay. In Santa Fe?" "Yeah, we'll sing for my guests. Business will get better." "Really, of course." Then next to ours, the owner plays the Spanish guitar and his girlfriend sings folk songs. They perform for their guests every night, so their business is way better than ours. Micah sent back a smiling emoji. "Then let's sing too." That message sent my imagination soaring. What if she wasn't just talking about a one-time thing? What if, like me, she made this motel the center of her life? During the day, I would go out and find guests, and she would look after the motel. At night, we would play our guitars together, improvising songs for our guests. How wonderful would that be? And what if the warden and my mom came to Santa Fe to stop me from staying here, and she stood by my side, telling them firmly that she would support me, no matter what? How wonderful would that be? The night and the lights seemed to have woven the small town of Santa Fe into an old poem. On the adobe-lined streets, groups of tourists drifted by, their eyes catching on the March flowers just beginning to wake. But no one, not a single soul, seemed to notice the little motel simply called the inn. I couldn't just wait passively anymore. I grabbed my guitar from my room, found a spot under the cottonwood tree across the street, and started to play. After one song, a few tourists had gathered, asking if I was a busker. The moment I told them I was the owner of the motel across the way, half the crowd vanished. Only a young couple, students by the look of them, remained. After I promised them a 30% discount, they finally agreed to give our place a try. Even so, I considered it a win. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I took the guitar back to the inn and headed over to Finn's bar, the Drifter's Rest. I ordered a beer, as usual, and we started hashing out the details of our perfect getaway package. By the time we'd nailed down a few key points, it was already 11 p. I didn't feel like going back to the empty motel, so I ordered another couple of beers. Finn tried to console me. Don't stress so much about the M, man. Once we launch this plan, business will pick up. I'm sure of it. I nodded, clinking my bottle against his. We kept talking, and eventually, the conversation drifted to the woman who was always dressed in red. Finn joked, ever since she left Santa Fe, our profits have been cut in half. She'll be back, I said. He looked at me, confused. You sure? The night before she left, I ran into her. It was obvious. She hasn't found what she's looking for yet. The knot's still tied tight. Finn nodded, sighing. That's a woman who's been seriously wounded. And a wound like that doesn't heal easy. I just don't get what kind of man could hurt someone like her. I managed a small smile. I used to not get it either, but I think I'm starting to understand. What's that supposed to mean? I shrugged, raising my beer for another toast. Some things you just have to feel, you can't explain. Finn made a face of mock frustration, drained his beer, and walked up to the stage. His voice filled the bar, and for a little while, my world went quiet. I leaned back, hands behind my head, and closed my eyes, letting the music wash over me. Then my phone buzzed. I pulled it out. The warden. My stomach dropped. I knew this was coming. You can't outrun a freight train. I answered, forcing a smile into my voice. Hey, warden. What are you doing up so late? Your mother and I are coming to Santa Fe in a couple of days. I'm doing great out here, really. You guys don't need to make the long trip. His voice was ice. Don't play dumb with me, Leo. You know damn well why we're coming. Yeah, I know. A man needs to have a plan. He needs to be responsible. You tell me, what in the hell are you doing messing around in Santa Fe? Being in Santa Fe is the plan. You don't just live for yourself, son. You're 27 years old. It's time you started thinking about your responsibilities. I was silent for a long time, and in my silence, the warden hung up. The dial tone droned on, a soundtrack to the anxiety churning in my gut. I grabbed the other beer and chugged it down, letting the night and the alcohol swallow me whole. Back at the inn, I collapsed onto the bed without even bothering to wash up. I wanted anyone to explain it to me. Why is it that every time I choose a path for myself, I run into a wall of resistance? Am I the one veering off course? Or is the world itself pushing me away? I couldn't find the answer. I sent a message to Micah, throwing the question at her, hoping she could offer an outsider's perspective. A moment later, her reply came through. You shouldn't be worried about who is veering off course. You should be worried about why. Maybe I shouldn't have asked her. She was too smart, immediately elevating the conversation to a philosophical plane that left me feeling even more lost. It took me a while to type back. There are tons of people from out of town who run motels in Santa Fe. A lot of them are single. Why am I the one getting all this pressure from my family? Micah replied, how do you know they didn't face the same pressure? So you're saying they did, but they stuck with it? Yes. Our perspective is always limited. We tend to see things from a position that benefits us, which makes it easy to feel like everyone else's setup is flawed and that we're the ones being wronged. People are so selfish. And what's worse is that many people mistake their selfishness for nobility. Are you talking about me? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she wrote, your decision to stay in Santa Fe can be seen as a young man forging his own path, or it can be seen as you ignoring your parents' feelings. The world is full of contradictions. There's no absolute right or wrong. It just depends on whether the people whose understanding you crave are willing to give it to you. So the key is understanding, right? If they're willing to understand you, you can build a life in Santa Fe, give back to your family, even to society. Then you're noble. If they're not willing to understand, then even if you succeed, you'll always be selfish in their eyes. Her words were like a floodlight in a dark room. If I was really going to do this, I had to get the warden and my mom on my side. As I was trying to figure out how to make them understand, another message from Micah came in. Are your parents coming to find you? Yeah, any day now. They want you to have a stable career and a girlfriend, right? That's what all parents want. So give them what they want. I could maybe turn the inn into a stable career someday. But a girlfriend? Where was I supposed to find a girlfriend they would approve of right now? I thought of Micah. But in this situation, how could I possibly ask her? Leo, why aren't you responding? I can't give them what they want right now. This time, Micah took a long time to reply. I know your father has always thought of me as your girlfriend. I couldn't be sure if she was hinting at something. I decided to test the waters. So, did you ever admit it to him? Why wouldn't I? It was only later that we had our big breakup. And then you went to America. Micah, you don't have to be speechless. That's the chronological order of events. You're very good at dodging the important parts. You think I'm slippery? Yes. And if you're so slippery, why were you asking me for all that serious advice just now? Even the slyest fox is no match for a good hunter. This time, Micah didn't reply at all. Maybe that wasn't the conversation she'd been hoping for. But what was she hoping for? Was it for me to say, "Honey, let's start over"? Right now? The words "let's start over" felt impossibly difficult. I didn't want another rushed beginning. After everything that had happened, love deserved to be handled with a clear head. So I didn't message Micah again. The immediate problem was figuring out what to say to the warden and my mom to make them understand my decision to run a motel in Santa Fe. The truth was, there was no good excuse. This time, even the warden was on my mom's side. And with his temper, once his mind was made up, what could I possibly say to change it? It looked like for the second time since leaving Indianapolis, I was about to disappoint them with my stubbornness. The night deepened. My mind was a tangled mess of thoughts I couldn't unravel, and eventually I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, just as I was getting out of bed, the landlord, Mr. Ortiz, showed up again. I offered him a cigarette, same as always. He took a long drag. "How's that rent money coming along?" I forced a smile. "Hey, we've still got 4 days. His face hardened. "Let's get this straight. If you don't have the rent by the deadline, I'm leasing the place to someone else. Don't you go saying I was unreasonable." "I understand." Only then did he nod, cradling his cup of coffee as he left. Casey looked at me, confused. "Leo, you haven't figured out that 70 grand for the rent yet? It's handled. Then why didn't you just give it to him?" "I have my reasons." "Oh, right. That money was from Chloe, wasn't it?" I nodded. Casey grinned, trying to take credit. "See? I'm useful, right? If I hadn't told her, you'd have been too embarrassed to ask. You know me so well." "Heh, we're partners. Of course I know you." I gave him a look that was more grimace than grin. He immediately backed down. "Dude, don't look at me like that. It's creepy. From now on, you don't say another word to Chloe about the inn's business." "Got it. But she cares about you so much. Why can't I talk to her?" "You think her life is all sunshine and rainbows, don't you?" Casey nodded emphatically. "Of course. She's a big star. She's not short on money or people who love her. That's all on the surface. Her life isn't easy, and we can't add to her burdens. Just remember what I said. Don't ever do something like this again. Or else," I said, patting the belt at my waist. Casey threw his hands over his head in an exaggerated panic. "Never again. I swear, never again." I couldn't help but smile. He was still a kid at heart. A serious lecture wouldn't necessarily work on him. But then again, neither would empty threats. His "never again" was probably worth nothing. I ignored him, lit a cigarette, and sank onto the sofa, my head still pounding with the thought of my parents' impending visit. That was why I hadn't paid the rent yet. I wasn't sure I could withstand the pressure of family responsibility. If I couldn't, I'd have to go back to Indianapolis with them. 2 more days passed. Our new Airbnb listing finally paid off. A couple had booked a room online yesterday and checked in this evening. For us, it was like rain after a long drought. The desire to stay in Santa Fe, to make this motel work, burned a little brighter. As evening approached, I took my stool out again and sat under the cottonwood tree across the street, playing my guitar. A crowd gathered, and this time when I announced I was the owner, a few of them actually seemed interested in staying. An hour passed. During a break, I took a few sips of water from my thermos and lit a cigarette, enjoying the gentle evening breeze. Maybe this was the charm of Santa Fe. Even though it was commercialized, you could still find these moments of strange tranquility. Just as I finished my cigarette, the greasy, delicious smell of food truck cooking drifted down the alley. I was getting hungry. I asked Casey to go grab me something to eat while I leaned back against the cottonwood, closing my eyes to rest up for my next set. Suddenly, I felt a tickle on my nose. Amid the smell of frying food, I caught the scent of a woman's perfume. I opened my eyes and found Micah leaning over me, a willow leaf in her hand, which she'd been using to tease me. I was so surprised I blinked several times, making sure I wasn't hallucinating. "Weren't you supposed to be in the States for 2 months? What are you doing back so soon?" "Life happens. Sometimes you have to change your plans." I stared at her, speechless for a long moment. She looked me up and down, then glanced around. "This is such a beautiful place," she said. "So why do you look so pathetic?" I looked around too, and finally smiled. "A lonely man on a chilly night. What do you expect?" I added, "And I'm starving. I haven't had dinner yet either." I stood up and offered her my stool. "Sit here for a minute. Food's on the way." As if on cue, Casey appeared with a bag full of takeout. He stared at Micah, shocked. "Hey, beautiful lady. You're back in Santa Fe to see Leo again." Micah smiled and nodded at him. I motioned for him to hand over the food. Casey passed me the bag, shot me a conspiratorial wink, and took his own dinner back inside the inn. I sat down next to Micah and opened the bag. "These are all local specialties. They're pretty good. Take whatever you want." Micah eagerly picked out a few tacos and started eating. "How did you get here?" I asked her. "Bro, did you get your Q7 fix?" Yeah, but I donated it to the company as a corporate car. So what are you driving now? Micah pointed to a spot nearby. I followed her finger and saw a white Volkswagen CC. It was a nice car, but not exactly a luxury vehicle. You're driving a CC? I asked, confused. Micah nodded. Yeah, I asked CC about it, and she said she's had one for years and it's been great. So I bought one. I knew our friend CC loved that car. It was how she got her nickname. But for Micah to be driving one, it just didn't fit her status. Micah seemed to read my mind. She smiled. You should just drive a car you like. Besides, isn't life about freedom? Why does everything have to be confined by a box? That was something I had once strived for, but hearing it from her lips was still stunning. I wasn't sure if my philosophy had rubbed off on her. As I sat there in silence, Micah finished her food and held out her hand for more. I passed her the bag again. She paused. Leo, she said, do you have any beer? Let's have some beer. I stared at Micah, puzzled. You like beer? Isn't eating street food and drinking beer a form of enjoyment? She countered. For me, it is definitely. She gave me a small smile. So, do you have any? No, but there's a corner store at the end of the block. I can go get some. Let's go together. Okay, let's go. We agreed. After stashing the leftover food at the inn, Micah and I started walking down the street under the newly fallen dusk, chatting as we went. Have your dad and mom been to Santa Fe yet? Micah asked. I stopped, a look of pure exasperation on my face. They came and went. What? I wrapped things up as fast as I could, and I still miss them. A simple test, and I knew why she'd come back. She was here to help me make my dream of a motel chain a reality. She'd hinted at it a couple of days ago when we were texting, but it hadn't been so obvious then. Micah's face was still filled with regret. So what did your parents say? Nothing, because they haven't come yet. Micah put her hands on her hips, her face a mask of anger, so annoyed she wouldn't even speak to me. I gently pulled her hands from her hips, grinning. Don't be mad. I was just messing with you. Oomph. I'm making you chug beers for that. I'd never heard her make that humph sound before. It was so unexpected that I just stared at her, my eyes wide. The more I looked, the more endearing she seemed. Micah ignored me, turned, and started walking ahead on her own. I caught up and gently pulled her to a stop. She looked at me. Are you going to apologize? Make that humph sound for me again. No one's going to talk to you if you don't apologize. And no one's getting an apology if I don't hear a humph. You first. No, you first. After going back and forth like this a few more times, we somehow, magically, arrived at the corner store. I temporarily set aside our dispute. What kind of beer do you want? Whatever. I bought a case of canned Santa Fe Nut Brown Ale. When I turned around, after paying, Micah was already sitting on a coin-operated mechanical horse by the window. I knew just what to do. I dropped a quarter in the slot, and the horse started rocking. Leo, aren't you going to ride? I've only got one quarter left. I'll save it for you, I said, cracking open a can of beer and taking a sip. Micah held out her hand. Give me one. You're rocking back and forth. Drink it later. Don't worry, my balance is excellent. Seeing her confidence, I opened a can for her and handed it over. She was impressively able to drink it easily while keeping rhythm with a rocking horse. But she didn't seem to like the taste. She squeezed her eyes shut, her face contorting in a look of pain. He left to her. You're just putting on a brave face, aren't you? You don't even know how to drink beer. Micah wiped the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand and said in a breezy tone, the beer doesn't taste good, but I'm having fun drinking it. How can you have fun if it doesn't taste good? The taste is a physical sensation. The fun is a psychological one. They're independent. There's no conflict. I'm starting to think you're getting more and more philosophical. Fine, I'll put it in simpler terms. The beer doesn't taste good, but we're drinking it together, and that makes me happy. I didn't doubt her words for a second. The truth was, when I was with her, even the smallest, most insignificant thing made me happy. Was this what being in love felt like? In the time it took to have that conversation, Micah had finished her can. The mechanical horse came to a stop at almost the exact same moment. I slid another quarter into the slot, and the horse started rocking again, carrying Micah away as if painting a picture more beautiful than Santa Fe itself. We left the corner store and went back to the cottonwood tree across from the inn. I finished my food, picked up my guitar, and started playing again. Micah copied me, taking a sip of beer and a bite of taco with relish. I just sung the first line when she asked, "Are you singing for me?" Not just for you, for the tourists passing by, too. I've calculated that about half an hour of singing brings in one customer. That sounds exhausting. So you could take a turn later, okay? Sure, no problem. I nodded and kept singing. The crowd of tourists was thinning out, though. The evening rush was over. As I sang, I suddenly felt a weight on my thigh, and a cascade of silky hair brushed against my strumming hand. I looked down and saw that Micah had fallen asleep, her head resting on my lap. I smiled. Looks like she wouldn't be able to keep her promise to sing for me tonight. But that was fine. I knew she must be exhausted. Or maybe she just had too much beer. I gently patted her, but she didn't respond. I set my guitar aside, scooped her up, and carried her into the inn. I had Casey open up a room for us. After I laid her gently on the bed, I noticed her face was flushed. Clearly, she couldn't handle her alcohol. I want to make her a cup of detox tea and waited for it to cool before waking her. I handed her the cup, feigning annoyance. You're drunk. Hurry up and drink this, or you'll feel terrible tomorrow. Unlike most people, Micah was incredibly quiet when she was drunk. She leaned against the headboard, took the cup from me, and sipped it. Like a child, she said, I'm not drunk. I smiled. That's what everyone who's drunk says. Micah twirled the cup in her hands and fell silent. I'm going to go to the front desk and settle today's accounts, I said. You finish your tea and get some rest. Before I could get up, Micah reached out and grabbed my arm, shaking her head, silently telling me not to go. What's wrong? Let's just talk. Some things, maybe you can only say them when you've had a drink. My heart started to pound. I had no idea what she was about to say. Suddenly, she started to cry. She threw her arms around me, and the tea she was still holding sloshed over the collar of my shirt, soaking through. Don't ever leave without saying goodbye again, she sobbed. I'm so scared of that feeling. It's like losing you forever. Hearing that, a storm of emotions churned inside me. These were probably the words she'd want to say that night at the motel on the highway, but I'd been so cold then. So today, she needed the alcohol to finally say them. She, more than anyone, must be terrified of people leaving without a word. That's how her father, Marcus, had left, without so much as a final goodbye. I'm sorry, I whispered. I was immature. I shouldn't have made you go through that feeling again. Micah cried even harder. Leo, when I decided to be with you, the only word in my mind was forever. That's why I was so afraid you would betray me, betray that word. I know. I was so sensitive that I ignored your feelings. No words could express what I was feeling. I just held her tighter so the crying woman in my arms would no longer feel so alone. I held Micah until her crying subsided. Then, I gently let go and wiped the tears from her face. Go to sleep, I said softly. I'll sit here with you until you do. She nodded. I fluffed her pillow, helped her lie down, and stroked her hair, signaling for her to rest. She obediently closed her eyes, but then said, Leo, can you sing to me? What do you want to hear? My last defense. I smiled. That song is about a proud woman, not a proud man. You should sing it to me. The woman in the song isn't proud anymore. I thought about the lyrics. It really was about a woman letting go of her last offense for the man she loved, not just out of fear of loneliness, but because of a heart that was determined to love him completely. Finally, I suggested, how about we sing it together? We'll trade verses. Micah nodded and began to sing before I could. I never once resisted your charm, though you were never mesmerized by me. I always watched you with a smile, my feelings spilling from my eyes so easily. I used to imagine, on a lonely night, you'd finally notice me in my room. You'd close your eyes and kiss me, holding me tight in your arms without a word. I do love you. I love you completely. For the first time in my life, I'm letting go of my last offense, letting myself dream of everything about you and me. You do love me. You love me completely. For the first time in my life, I'm letting go of my last offense, believing I can truly, deeply love you. When it was my turn, I sang, but I switched all the I's to U's and all the U's to me's until I finished the song, feeling perfectly content. Micah looked at me, a hint of playful resentment in her voice. Why are you so mean? You completely ruined the lyrics. But the meaning is still there. By singing it that way, I made sure you stayed the main character of the song. You really went to a lot of trouble, didn't you? I smiled and nodded. Micah's tone turned wistful. I'm afraid you're just making fun of me for not being reserved enough. Always finding ways to track you down while you don't seem to want to see me. How could you think that? The truth is, it's not you I'm afraid to see. It's the gap between us. That gap makes a person feel weak. Leo, I'll wait for you. I'll wait until that gap no longer holds us back. You have to work hard. I nodded and glanced out the window. The night was black as ink, but far in the distance, a single star seemed to be twinkling, showing the way. I left Micah's room and went to tally up the day's accounts. Then I sat at the computer, working on the marketing strategy for the perfect getaway package. When I finally looked up, it was already 1 a.m. I rubbed my temples to ease the fatigue, but it was only physical. My heart, full of hope, wasn't tired at all. I lit a cigarette, took a drag, and exhaled heavily. I knew that one day, Micah and I would have to face that gap head-on. There were only three possible outcomes. 1. The gap between us would remain, and the pain it caused would continue to tear at our fragile love, day after day, year after year. 2. She would lose everything financially, and the gap would disappear, but could she adapt to a life of simplicity after being accustomed to luxury? 3. Through hard work, I would finally become her equal in the business world. I would definitely choose the third option. It seemed like the best, the one most conducive to happiness. But maybe there was a fourth outcome. We would become strangers, only remembering in the dead of night that we had once loved each other, while the person sleeping beside us was someone else. The next day, I woke up a little late. The moment I opened my door, I saw Micah in one of our in-work shirts, carrying 2 thermoses of hot water to a guest room. She knocked politely before delivering the water. When she came out, I stopped her. "What are you doing?" "Bringing hot water to the guests." "I mean, why aren't you sleeping in?" "I went to bed early last night." "Now, stop blocking my way. I have another room to clean." "Don't you usually go for a run in the morning?" "I can clean the rooms." "You should go for your run." Micah turned it back on me. "You're the one who needs to go wash up. The breakfast I bought is getting cold." Before I could stop her, she pushed a cleaning cart from the corner and headed toward another guest room. I stood there for a moment, watching her go. I imagined the proprietress of some charming B&B and thought she couldn't possibly be more capable than Micah was right now. After washing up, I sat down to the breakfast Micah had bought for me and started chatting with Casey, who was manning the front desk. His tone was, as usual, full of envy. "Leo, you really found a first lady for our inn. She's the most beautiful innkeeper in all of Santa Fe. No, in all the scenic spots in the whole country. She's not going to be here for long. So, is she the first lady of the inn or not?" I turned the question back on him. "What do you think?" "Of course. If she wasn't, why would she be cleaning rooms and bringing hot water to the guests?" I didn't say anything more, but I treasured these moments because they were so fleeting. So fleeting, I didn't even have time to get used to them. Micah finally finished cleaning. She sat down next to me, looking relieved. I picked up a pot sticker and held it to her lips. "Try this, it's really good." She took a small bite, and I handed her a cup of soy milk. Casey exclaimed from behind the counter, "Hey, you too. When you're being all lovey-dovey, could you spare a thought for a single guy like me?" Micah and I exchanged a smile and completely ignored him, sharing the cup of soy milk, which seemed to push him to the brink of a breakdown. Before we could finish breakfast, the roar of a sports car engine echoed from outside. A Ferrari 458 and an Audi R8 pulled up. The sight of those 2 cars immediately soured my mood. I knew exactly who they belonged to. Sure enough, Abner and Milan got out of the cars. Micah glanced at me. I did my best to stay calm and signaled that I was fine. Abner and Milan walked into the inn together. Milan spoke first. "Sis, you came back from the States and didn't even call me? If the people over there hadn't told me, I wouldn't have even known you were back." "I'm only here for a few days," Micah replied simply. Abner looked at me, then took over the conversation, addressing Micah. "You came back to see him?" Micah seemed very conscious of my feelings. She stood up and said to them, "Let's find a place to get a drink and talk there." Milan and Abner both nodded in agreement. As they were about to leave, Milan shot me a look full of disdain. "You opened this inn?" "I did. How ambitious." Micah frowned and scolded her. "Milan, that's enough." Milan didn't back down, meeting Micah's glare head-on. "I just can't stand him. What's so great about a piece of trash like him?" I was once again on the verge of losing my temper, but I fought to control it. I just smiled. "I also think you're a pretty nasty woman, but I'm not going to put up a sign that says Milan and dogs not allowed, which is the only reason you have the opportunity to stand here and spew your garbage at me right now." Milan was about to explode. Micah grabbed her, signaling for Abner to help. Abner grabbed her from the other side. Milan shook them both off, her face full of resentment as she pointed at me. "I hope you don't regret what you said today." Then she turned and stormed out of the inn. Another roar of engines, and the 3 of them quickly disappeared from view. I sat back down, too numb to feel much of anything. If I decided to be with Micah, scenes like this would happen again and again. Beside me, Casey's face was pale. He stammered, "Leo, that guy and girl were intense." "Who are they?" "Rich people." "Yeah, an Audi R8 and a Ferrari 458. They're really rich." I pulled a cigarette from the pack and stuck it in my mouth, glancing outside. The air still seemed to reek of high-octane gasoline. Casey reminded me wistfully, "They took your first lady away." I shot him a look, but didn't reply. "Leo, can you tell me who's who in that group?" "No, you're in a really bad mood." "I'll just shut up then." An hour later, Micah sent me a text. She said she had to go to Portland for a bit, but would try to be back by dusk. I replied with a casual message, telling her to focus on her own business. Just after noon, 3 days after his last call, the warden called me again. He told me he and my mom had arrived at the Santa Fe bus station and I needed to pick them up. I grabbed the keys to the van and headed out. As I passed the empty lot, Micah's new white VWCC was still there, but a wave of melancholy washed over me, even though I knew we'd only be apart for half a day. I stood there for a moment before driving to the station. The warden was as expressionless as ever. My mom, however, glared at me with a grim face. I quickly put on a smile, grabbed 2 bottles of water from the car, and handed them over. Warden Mom, rough trip, huh? I'll treat you to some of Santa Fe's best local food later. I guarantee you'll love it. My mom took the water. We didn't come to Santa Fe for the food. You don't need to spend your money. The phrase, spend your money, suddenly created a vast distance between us. My spirits sank, but I forced a smile. Aren't you my parents? You finally made it out to Santa Fe. As long as you have a good time, I don't care how much it costs. I opened the car door for them. The warden sighed, but didn't say much, getting in first. My mom followed. I closed the door, got in myself, and started the engine, heading straight for the best restaurant in town. After we ordered, I asked my dad, "Warden, want a drink?" Before he could answer, my mom cut in, "No drinking. We have serious business to discuss with you later." Even though I was prepared, my stomach tightened. I didn't say anything, just fiddled with the lighter in my hands. After a moment of silence, my mom said, "Leo, you're our son. For better or for worse, we're responsible for you. So, we didn't come to Santa Fe to blame you. We just hope you'll come back to Indianapolis with us. Your father and I have discussed it. He's going to get you a job at his office as a records keeper. In less than a year, you'll be a permanent employee. Your life will finally be stable." I was stunned. I turned to my father to confirm. "Dad, are you really going to give me a job at your office?" The warden nodded. Yes. A profound sense of powerlessness washed over me. Even the warden, a man of immense principle, had compromised on this. I remembered how I'd begged him before, and he hadn't budged. In this moment, I couldn't find the words to argue. I just lowered my head in silence. My mom softened her tone. "Leo, tell me, is it really so great, drifting around out here all by yourself?" "It's not great, but..." "But what?" "Mom, it's not that I can't accept a 9-to-5 life. The problem is, I've already invested a lot of money, and I have real ideas for this motel. For years, I've been living with the reputation of being a good-for-nothing who can't make anything of himself. This time I want to be a success." "Now you want to be a success? What were you doing in the years after you graduated from college?" "I don't need to remind you that you're 27 this year, do I? People your age who got married early have kids in kindergarten. And you," I retorted, "a marriage without a solid financial foundation is fragile. I don't see anything wrong with establishing a career before starting a family." My mom's face immediately darkened. She scolded, "You tell me, beside yourself, who else thinks you're right? Who supports you in this?" I thought of Micah, but unless she said it herself, I didn't have the confidence to speak for her. So, once again, I fell silent. Finally, in my silence, the warden spoke. "Leo, we're not trying to force you to come back to Indianapolis. But there's one condition. You need to get your life in order first. You have a friend named Ben, right? If you could be like him, settle down with a career in Portland, we as your parents would have nothing more to say." His words forced me to look at myself. In my current situation, it would be strange if my parents weren't worried. Suddenly, the confidence to stand my ground began to crumble. But the thought of giving up was even more unbearable. Back at the inn, I set my parents up in a room to rest and was once again plunged into the agony of decision-making. I was beginning to feel that my so-called persistence was insignificant in the face of family responsibility, and I was acting like a willful teenager. I started to miss the version of myself from last year back in Indianapolis who had a clear mind. I couldn't understand why I was willing to accept a stable life then, but not now. Thinking about it, the answer became clear. The root of the change was that my world now included Micah. That's why I was so resistant to an ordinary life. But could the warden and my mom, who valued stability above all, understand how I felt right now? I didn't expect them to. I knew that I had to grit my teeth and bear everything that was happening. The sky gradually darkened. It was time for dinner, but Micah, who said she'd be back before dusk, still hadn't returned. I started to worry and was about to call her when my parents came out of their room, saying they wanted to take me out to eat. I felt a sense of helplessness. I knew that taking me to eat was just their way of giving me an ultimatum, forcing me to make a choice, and soon. After a moment of silence, I finally said to them, "Let's wait a little longer. We're still missing one person. When she gets back, we'll all go eat together." My mom looked at me, confused. "Missing one person? Who?" I steel myself, looked at my mom and the warden, and answered, "My girlfriend." The warden looked calm, but my mom's expression was one of pure shock. I motioned for them to wait a moment, pull my phone from my pocket, and dial Micah's number. The phone had only rung twice when she picked up. "Are you back yet?" I asked. "On my way. Where are you?" "Let me check." After a short pause, she said, "Just about to cross the Diamondtail Bridge." "You're close, then?" "Yeah. Why were you in such a hurry to call? Did something happen?" "My parents are here." Micah's voice was tinged with surprise. "What did they get in?" "Around noon. They're waiting for you to have dinner with us." "I'll be right there." As soon as she said it, I could have sworn I heard the roar of an engine intensify on her end. I quickly warned her, "Slow down. It's not that urgent." She had already hung up. A moment later, a white Audi R8 appeared, flying down the road and screeching to a halt in front of the inn. I knew it was Milan's car, which Micah must have borrowed. The car had barely stopped when Micah opened the door and got out. She walked towards us quickly, but I could still sense her nervousness. When she reached us, she greeted my parents with deep respect. I let out a soft breath and took Micah's hand. With the most serious expression I could muster, I said to my parents, "I know you've met before, but I'd like to formally introduce you. This is my girlfriend, Micah. She's from Portland." The warden was already very familiar with Micah and gave her a warm smile. My mom, however, was stunned. Even though she'd met her, she looked Micah up and down several times. Micah squeezed my hand and lowered her head, looking shy. Finally, my mom spoke. "You really are Leo's girlfriend?" "Yes," Micah nodded. My mom looked like she wanted to say more, but the warden waved his hand at us, signaling for us to go eat. The words that were on the tip of my mom's tongue were swallowed. At the restaurant, Micah and I sat on one side of the table, my parents on the other. The warden ordered while I took the water pitcher from the server and poured a glass for him and my mom. Micah seemed a bit reserved, probably because my mom wasn't being particularly warm. I poured her a glass of water too and gave her a look to signal she could relax. She nodded. The warden finished ordering. Normally, this would be the moment my mom would start asking about Micah's family background. But surprisingly, she didn't. That puzzled me. On second thought, I realized the warden had probably already told her about Micah privately. Then, the warden, who was usually a man of few words, broke the silence. He asked Micah, "Micah, have you been busy with work lately?" Micah glanced at me before answering. "Not too busy. I usually have time to come see Leo every week." I understood what she was doing. She was laying the groundwork to support my decision to stay in Santa Fe. But it pained me a little that she, a woman of such principle, had to tell this lie for me. I didn't want her to keep making sacrifices for my sake. My mom seized the opportunity. "So you support him staying in Santa Fe to run this inn?" Micah nodded. "I support him." My mom's expression turned cold. "Then tell me, why would you support such a foolish endeavor?" "Auntie, do you really think what Leo is doing is foolish?" Micah's question was delivered with the quiet authority of a CEO, which seemed to catch my mom off guard. She stammered for a moment before replying, "Settle down and start a family before building a career. That's an old saying. He's defying it, so it's foolish." Micah didn't rush to rebut her. Instead, she turned to me. "Leo, starting a family and building a career. Can you handle the relationship between those two things?" "I have the confidence to handle it, but I need your cooperation." Before I could finish, Micah nodded. "I'm willing to cooperate with you, and I'm willing to wait for you." My mom let out a dry laugh. Willing to cooperate, willing to wait. Those are nice things to say. But in this day and age, when you can get married today and divorce tomorrow, can you promise you'll marry no one but our Leo? My mom's question was like dropping a bomb into a deep pond. I didn't want Micah to have to make a promise like that in this setting. It was completely unnecessary. No one can predict the future. Just as I was about to step in and rescue her, Micah calmly replied to my mom, "Andy, I'm not a casual person. Leo is the first boyfriend I've ever had, and he will be the last. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, I'm willing to stay by his side until I marry him." My mom was skeptical, but her doubt was understandable. For a woman as exceptional as Micah to say at 27 that she'd never had a boyfriend before was hard for anyone to believe. But it was the truth. At that moment, the warden finally spoke up. "Honey, the girl has said this much. If we as parents still make things difficult, it would be unreasonable of us." My mom clearly had more to say, but she ultimately chose to remain silent. I was grateful she did. Micah had said everything that needed to be said. If my mom was still unsatisfied, there was probably nothing more Micah could do. Even so, the warden and my mom didn't explicitly state that they were willing to understand my decision to stay in Santa Fe. Perhaps we still needed one more heart-to-heart to completely dispel their doubts. After leaving the restaurant, Micah and I walked my parents back to the inn to rest. Then, the two of us strolled along the bluestone path, following the direction of the water. Why did you suddenly come back to Portland today? I asked her. Micah was quiet for a moment before answering. I had to do something that made me unhappy. Although I was curious about what it was, I didn't press her. If Micah wanted to tell me, she would. We walked a bit further, and Micah said she was tired. I found a spot with some steps by the river, and we sat down. She leaned her head on my shoulder and, after a long while, said softly, "Leo, I have to go back to the States the day after tomorrow." "So soon?" "Yes. The IPO can't have any hiccups. I have to be there for the whole process." Though I didn't want her to go, I put on a brave face. "Well then, here's to the successful listing of Aria Grande on the NASDAQ." "Thank you. I'll work hard." I held her tighter, but didn't say anything more. Silence made time feel longer, and that was me, using my own subjective theory of relativity to steal a few more moments with her. The spring wind blew quietly past us. Micah closed her eyes, enjoying it. I was starting to feel a bit tired myself, but just as I was about to close my eyes, I saw the woman in red sitting on the opposite bank. My judgment hadn't been wrong. She had, indeed, come back to Santa Fe. At almost the same moment, the woman in red spotted me. The Santa Fe River wasn't very wide. I smiled and called out to her, "Hi, we meet again." "Santa Fe is a small town," she replied. Our exchange startled Micah. She opened her eyes and looked at the woman across the river. At the same time, the woman in red looked at her. Their gazes locked for a solid 5 seconds. Then, the woman in red turned and walked away. Maybe the sight of Micah and me, a perfect pair, had stung her loneliness. After she left, I asked Micah, "Why were you staring at her for so long?" "Beautiful women always make you look twice." "No wonder she was staring at you for so long then," I said with a sigh. Micah ignored my teasing and asked in a serious tone, "Do you know her?" "No." "Then why were you talking to her?" "Is someone getting jealous?" "It's you who's being too friendly." I laughed. "She's a tourist, right?" "I was just trying to scout out a potential customer for our inn." "That's a good excuse." "Of course. I finally understand your real reason for opening an inn in Santa Fe." "What real reason?" "So you have a legitimate excuse to hit on all kinds of beautiful women." "Am I that shallow?" "You are exactly that shallow." After a short pause, she added, "I think you should just go back to Indianapolis with your dad." Seeing her pouting, I couldn't help but smile. Jealousy must be encoded in a woman's DNA. Even a woman as composed as Micah couldn't escape it. But thinking deeper, I realized this was my good fortune. It meant she loved me. It was just that she had never said those 3 words, "I love you," out loud. And I had never said them to her either. It made me feel like, compared to other couples in the throes of passion, we were always lacking a certain warmth. But you couldn't say we weren't in love. It was a puzzle, but not one I was obsessed with solving. I knew that one day, we would say those 3 words to each other. The next day, Micah woke up early. She bought us breakfast and then tirelessly cleaned the guest rooms. My parents saw it all. Of course, this wasn't an act she was putting on for them. She had done the same thing yesterday. The warden only had a 2-day vacation. After an early lunch, Micah and I took them to the bus station. Before they left, my mom pulled Micah aside for a private chat, which gave me and the warden a chance to talk alone. "Your mother and I have discussed your decision to open an inn in Santa Fe," he said. I asked nervously, "You're not against it anymore?" "It's not that we're not against it. It's that we don't know what else to do with you." His words stung. It took me a moment to reply. "I know I've been thoughtless, but please give me this chance. Let me transform my life here in Santa Fe." The warden sighed softly and patted my shoulder. "Of course, we hope you can build a career for yourself. But your personal life is the most important thing right now. When the time is right, you should talk to Micah about getting married." I glanced over at Micah, but I didn't make any promises to my dad. The word marriage felt too distant for us right now. If we were to get married, it would have to be after Aria Grande's successful IPO and after mine had expanded beyond Santa Fe and started to make a name for itself. Only then could we break free from some of the practical constraints and talk about marriage in a relatively comfortable environment. The bus slowly pulled away from the station. Micah and I stood side by side, waving goodbye to my parents until the bus completely disappeared from sight. I tilted my head back and let out a heavy breath. I had temporarily escaped the pressure from my family, but the weight of responsibility on my shoulders felt heavier than ever. This weight was driving me. I had to succeed in Santa Fe. Otherwise, I would have no face to show them again. At this point, I had burned all my bridges. Success or failure hinged on this one inn, which was still in a deep freeze. Micah took my hand beside me and asked softly, "You're under a lot of pressure right now, aren't you?" "Yeah. I feel like a soldier who's just burned his boats, facing a brutal war that has only just begun." Micah squeezed my hand tighter, her expression solemn. After a long moment, she said, "We're in this together, then." I looked at her. She hadn't said it explicitly, but those words told me everything about her current situation. It was very likely that her power struggle with Declan had reached its most critical stage. Back at the inn, Micah packed her bags. She was flying New York from Seattle tomorrow. "What time is your flight tomorrow?" I asked. 2 in the afternoon. "Then you have time to leave from Santa Fe tomorrow morning. I still have some things to take care of in Portland." I nodded, but I didn't want her to leave just like that. I finally came up with a good excuse. "You drove Milan's car here this time. You need to take your own car back, too. Let me drive it back to Portland for you." "No need. Just keep the car here. You might need it." Her refusal left me feeling dejected. After another moment of silence, I finally swallowed my pride and said in a low voice, "Actually, I just want to spend a little more time with you." Her packing stopped abruptly. She looked at me, her eyes also full of reluctance. This farewell would mean another month apart, maybe longer. She hugged me, her voice choked with emotion. "I don't want to leave you either, but so many things are out of my control." I held her tightly and whispered in her ear, "I understand. That's why I cherish every single second we have together. Let me go with you to Portland, okay?" Micah nodded gently. I held her even tighter and kissed her cheek, but the sweet kiss couldn't melt away the sorrow of parting. I began to sing softly in her ear, that song that represented her and myself, my last defense. As I sang, she began to cry again. Maybe it was for the injustices she had suffered, or maybe it was because two hearts that had been separated were now leaning on each other once more. Hand in hand with Micah, I stood outside the inn. The noon sun seemed brighter than usual, and the air had a hint of warmth. It struck me that since I had met Micah, we had already been through fall, winter, and spring. Now, spring was almost over, but our summer had yet to arrive. But that didn't stop me from looking forward to it, looking forward to the passion of summer, looking forward to seeing her appear before me in a long, white dress. That afternoon, Micah and I each drove a car back to Portland. She went straight to Aria Grande without stopping. I went to the supermarket, bought some groceries, and then returned to the old house. I wanted to cook a farewell dinner for her tonight. After washing all the vegetables, I cleaned the house, watered the wilting plants on the balcony, and finally went into Micah's room. I sat on her bed, looking around. In the corner by the closet, I saw 2 neatly placed RC cars and 2 guitars. These were the gifts we had once given each other. They held our joy and some of our sorrow, but they were still in their original state, while Micah and I had already gone through a full cycle of change. Around 5 in the afternoon, Micah finally finished her work and came back to the house. I happened to be sitting in her room, having just lit a cigarette. Before she could enter, I quickly stubbed it out, opened a window, and started fanning the air furiously with a pillow. Micah called my name from outside. I didn't answer, trying to buy time to destroy the evidence. I heard her footsteps getting closer, and then the door opened. She was startled to see me. "What are you doing in my room?" "Looking for something." Micah eyed me suspiciously. "Then why didn't you hear me when I called?" "I didn't. I was so tired from looking that I lay down on your bed for a bit." "Of course I didn't hear you." Micah took a few steps closer and frowned. "You were smoking in my room, weren't you?" There was no point in denying it anymore. I stuck my neck out. "I was. What are you going to do about it?" Unexpectedly, Micah didn't scold me. She smiled. "You were just trying to recreate the feeling of fighting with me, weren't you?" I took it as her offering me a way out and nodded quickly. Her face immediately turned serious. "Get out. Are you for real?" Micah didn't waste words, using her full strength to push me out of her room. "So violent," I exclaimed as I stumbled backward. "Serves you right for smoking in my room." "I was wrong." "Wrong about what?" "I really shouldn't have smoked in your room. How do you think I should punish a repeat offender like you?" Without thinking, I answered, "Kiss me." Micah pursed her lips and looked at me. "Since you're not willing, I'll punish myself." As I said that, I pulled Micah into an embrace and leaned in to kiss her. She didn't dodge. We were kissing again. She was still so inexperienced, but that didn't stop me from getting lost in the warmth that enveloped me. Just as I was losing myself, a sharp pain shot through my lips. I didn't struggle, just endured the pain and looked at Micah, who was so close to me. She finally opened her mouth and let go. I subconsciously touched my lips. "Why did you bite me?" "I'm leaving tomorrow." "What's the connection?" Micah nodded. "There's one. When that mouth of yours can't resist talking to other women, you'll remember how much it hurt when I bit you today." "It didn't hurt. Why don't you bite me again?" Micah narrowed her eyes and leaned towards me. I covered my mouth and took a step back, quickly saying, "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." "Don't bite me." Micah stopped. Only then did I say, "What if you start talking to other men when you're abroad? Should I bite you back?" "I won't. I'll still have to bite you back." Micah looked at me, speechless, and then nimbly dodged my playful lunge. We spent our last night before parting in this playful way. But the gut-wrenching reluctance to part didn't diminish at all, and it continued into the next day. In the airport terminal, Micah and I faced our final moment of separation. She took a set of keys from her handbag and gave them to me. These are the keys to the old house. If you have time in the future, remember to water the plants on the balcony. I'll just move them to Santa Fe to take care of them. Micah shook her head. That house needs to have some plants in it. Why? Micah smiled. With the plants for company, the house won't be lonely. I nodded and finally asked the question that had been bothering me for a long time. Can you tell me why you bought that old house in the first place? Micah thought for a moment before replying. I'll tell you on the day you marry me. I'm really curious. Why do we have to wait until that day? Because telling you on that day will make it especially meaningful. I daydreamed about that day coming, and in my daydream, the boarding announcement finally rang out. Micah took her suitcase from me. This time, we really had to say goodbye. Leo, I'm leaving. Okay. We seemed to be deliberately downplaying the sorrow of parting. Micah waved at me and walked towards the gate. I watched her retreating back, and suddenly my heart felt like it was being torn apart again. I had only felt this way when Ava left for her studies in the U.S. I couldn't control myself. I ran, catching up to her, and hugged her tightly from behind. My voice was almost a sob as I said, when you come back, it will be early summer. Remember to wear a pretty white dress. Because I've never seen you in a dress before. Micah nodded hard, but didn't turn to look at me. The boarding announcement sounded again. I had to let her go. She started walking forward again. Just when I thought I wouldn't see her face again, she turned back. Her eyes were glistening with tears, but she smiled at me. Leo, when I come back, I hope to see a confident you. I nodded and reminded her, okay. And don't forget to wear a pretty dress. I won't. Outside the airport fence, I watched the plane carrying Micah climb into the clouds. Finally succumbing to the overwhelming sorrow, I lit a cigarette. I looked up at the sky, and it was as if I could see her in the clouds, wearing a beautiful dress. I wondered if she could see a confident me. Driving the CC that Micah had left me, I didn't head straight for Santa Fe. Instead, I went back into Portland. There was something I needed to do. I had to find Ava. I hoped she could help me with advertising channels. The perfect getaway package. I had designed needed quality channels to spread the word. At this moment, I didn't want to be tied down by the past. My relationship with Ava was now defined as friends who could help each other in the business world. I knew the old me would have been too proud to do this. But after everything that had happened recently, I had come to a realization. I really needed to change. This change would allow me to say goodbye to my past self-deception and my many hesitations. It would allow me to face Ava, face my career, and finally become confident. Around 7 p.m., I met Ava at a coffee shop. After we sat down, we each ordered a drink. Ava looked exhausted. She took a sip of her coffee, but still managed to smile. I've been waiting for you to come find me. Why were you so sure I would? Ava shrugged. Well, you're here. I nodded and took a sip of my own coffee, my mind racing to figure out how to ask for her help. Before I could speak, she said, if I'm not mistaken, you've already created a marketing strategy for your inn, but you're having trouble with ad placement. Yeah, it's not practical for a small inn like ours to spend a fortune on advertising, but we definitely need it. Ava nodded. Your inn has a lot of weaknesses, and the competition among inns in Santa Fe is fierce. Almost every place has its own unique character. Without some unconventional methods, it's nearly impossible to stand out. After a pause, she asked, can you tell me about your marketing strategy? I immediately told her about the perfect getaway package. She listened, then fell into thought for a moment. So, you're targeting independent travelers? Right. Most people who visit Santa Fe are independent travelers. Not many are in tour groups. Do you have a specific ratio of tour groups to independent travelers? I shook my head. There's no way to get an exact count, but the nature of Santa Fe as a destination already means that independent travel is more rewarding. If it really is mostly independent travelers, then the advertising problem is actually quite easy to solve. I have an uncle who founded the largest independent travel website in the country. If we could get an ad on the homepage for your package, the effect would be incredible. I stared at Ava, dumbfounded. Even though she said it so casually, I knew that an ad spot on a website of that caliber was prime real estate. A space the size of a postage stamp would cost at least 6 figures. I finally said to Ava, I'm definitely interested in that ad spot, but I don't have the extra funds to run an ad like that. I know you don't have the funds, but isn't that why you came to me? Are you planning to front me the money? Ava shook her head. Knowing you, you wouldn't accept that. So, I'll arrange a meeting for you with my uncle, Mr. Coleman, the founder of Go Next Travel. I looked at her, even more confused. Why would a man as busy as him meet with a small timer, like me, over an ad spot. Ava smiled. Because his website has hit a developmental plateau. If you can give him some reasonable suggestions, I'm sure he won't be stingy with an ad spot. You mean you want me, an outsider, to give advice to an industry veteran like him? My reaction made Ava frown. Why not? Why can't you be more confident? The reason Mr. Coleman has hit a plateau is precisely because he's been in the industry for so long that his thinking has become rigid. He desperately needs a suggestion that can break through conventional thinking, and aren't outsiders the most likely to do that? There are plenty of outsiders. Why me? Because you have ideas, and you need this opportunity more than Mr. Coleman does. Leo, whether it succeeds or not is another matter, but at least you have to try. At worst, you'll have made a valuable connection, right? I finally nodded. When can you arrange for me to meet with Mr. Coleman? Ava thought for a moment. He's coming from New York to Seattle next Saturday. We'll set the meeting for then. Tonight, I'll send you some information on Go Next Travel. You should study it carefully, okay? No problem. Ava added a special emphasis. This time, I'm telling you up front about my relationship with my uncle. I'm only responsible for making the introduction. The rest is up to you to fight for. Don't you dare get suspicious again and think I've been pulling strings for you behind the scenes. I was silent for a long time before I said, I know. I'm sorry about last time. Even though I was upset, I shouldn't have returned the money to you that way. Ava shook her head. Back then, what I found so captivating about you was that straightforward personality. I think anyone else would have taken that $500,000. Your refusal was what made you different. In my eyes, that kind of uniqueness is a rare charm in a man. I managed a small smile. You could also call it being too proud for my own good. It doesn't matter anymore. A dull ache throbbed in my chest. She was right. For the person I was now and the person she was now, whether it was charm or pride, it really didn't matter anymore. We had torn each other apart, and in the process of growing back, we had each formed a relationship with someone else. So, my decision to define our relationship as business friends was the right one. Ava stared out the window, lost in thought. Just then, the server finally brought our dinner. Distracted, Ava reached for her coffee cup at the same time the server was putting down a plate. Her hand bumped the server's, and coffee spilled all over her sleeve. The server apologized profusely. Ava waved it off, saying it was her fault, and gestured for her to leave. The server bowed apologetically again before leaving. Ava rolled up her sleeve and took off her watch. Suddenly, I saw a scar on her wrist. She had already wiped the coffee off her watch with a napkin and was putting it back on. I grabbed her wrist, pushing the watch up. A 1-inch long scar was exposed right before my eyes. I hadn't been mistaken. How did you get this scar? Ava forcefully pulled her hand back, rolled down her sleeve, and said in a calm voice, I got it during a school-organized survival training in the U.S. It was an accident. Are you sure? I asked, frowning. What are you implying? Why is the cut on your wrist, of all places? A classmate didn't have a good grip on a knife, and it happened to fall on my wrist. Do you have any other questions? I stared at Ava, trying to find any trace of a lie in her expression. But she looked so composed that I could almost picture the knife she described accidentally falling. I finally shook my head, indicating I had no more questions. Ava picked up her handbag. I have some things to take care of at the office, so I'll be going. Remember to check your email tonight for the Go Next Travel information. You haven't even touched the pastry you ordered. Ava ignored me, giving me only her back as she quickly drove away in her Cadillac CTS, disappearing into the glittering city lights. After Ava left, I sat in a coffee shop for a long time. I didn't touch the pastry she had left behind. My mind kept replaying the image of that scar. Even though I had convinced myself it was just an accident, I couldn't shake it. Finally, I finished my coffee and stared out the window again, lost in thought. In my days, I wished I could become one of the broken streetlights outside, a sad, dark lamp that could no longer illuminate the path for those passing by. I left the coffee shop and went to CC's music bar, the Hollow City, but she wasn't there. Only Robin was in the restaurant. He brought me a large pitcher of beer. I drank half of it in one go before asking him, Where's CC? She went to the Fifth Season bar. They're having a special runway show over there tonight. I nodded and didn't say anything more, just kept drinking. Robin tossed me a cigarette and smiled. Something on your mind? Not really. Just feeling a little unsettled. Unsettled. I lit the cigarette and took a deep drag. I can't quite put my finger on it. It's just not a good feeling. Is it because Micah left? Maybe. Robin didn't press further, just smoked with me in silence. When he finished, he stubbed out the cigarette and asked, Have you heard anything about Manwin? I shook my head. I asked Chloe to look into it, but she hasn't gotten back to me yet. No rush. Take your time. I looked at Robin and saw a kind of cowardice in his face, a fear of the outcome. It made me wonder what love really was, that it could make a tough guy like Robin run for years, only mustering the courage to wait for an answer when he was forced to. Because I'd had a lot to drink, I left Micah's car parked at CC's and took a cab back to the old house. I didn't even bother to wash up before going into Micah's room and using her desktop computer. After booting it up, I saw that Ava, true to her word, had already sent over the files for Go Next Travel. I lit a cigarette and, fighting off the dizziness from the alcohol, began to read through them carefully. A moment later, my phone rang. It was Ava. I answered. "Leo, did you get the files?" she asked. "Yeah, I'm looking at them now. Can you give me some personal information on Mr. Coleman?" "You mean his professional experience?" "The more detailed, the better." "Hey, do you still use Facebook Messenger? We could chat there. I have a work account. I'll add you in a bit." Ava hung up. Her abruptness left me feeling a little helpless. I hadn't even given her my name. Just as I was about to text it to her, a notification popped up on the computer. An ad request. The username was Aura Creative, which was undoubtedly Ava's work account. Could it be that she had remembered my profile name all these years? There was no need to question it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have received this request. Soon, a message from Aura Creative came through. "It's Ava. This is my work account." I didn't reply immediately. Instead, relying on memory, I typed her old Facebook username into the search bar. It came up right away. Her username was still the same, Ava J, but her last status update was from years ago. The account had clearly been abandoned for a long time. I finally closed the search and replied to Ava. "Got it. Send me Mr. Coleman's personal file." Ava seemed prepared. She immediately sent me a document. I accepted it and sent her a thumbs up emoji and thanks. She replied with a smiley face, and our conversation ended there. By the time I had compiled the key points from the documents, it was already midnight. I rubbed my temples to relieve some of the fatigue and was about to wash up and go to bed. But just as I was about to shut down the computer, I noticed that Ava's account was still online. I sent her a message. "Why are you still up? Still have some work to do." I was a bit puzzled. "Do you have to handle everything at your company personally?" "The company is still in its early stages, and we don't have a complete management system yet. I have to be involved in a lot of the work. You should take care of yourself. Your health is the most important thing for your work." "You too. Are you still at the office?" "Yeah, I'll be heading home soon." The stilted text made it hard for me to reply. In the brief silence, I randomly opened my computer and clicked around aimlessly until I saw a folder named My U.S. Years. I stopped. It suddenly hit me that I was using Micah's computer. That folder must be full of her photos from America. I wasn't sure if this was an invasion of her privacy, but curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. My guess was right. The folder was filled with a massive number of photos of Micah. It made sense. She always liked to take pictures to commemorate things. I scrolled through them one by one. Besides her personal photos, there were also pictures of her receiving various awards. It seemed Abner hadn't been exaggerating. She really was a talented businesswoman. The awards were proof enough. About halfway through, I saw a separate folder. The folder was named with Micah's and Abner's names. Before I even opened it, a knot formed in my stomach. It was a completely natural reaction, not something I could control. I lit another cigarette before opening the folder. The knot in my stomach tightened. It was full of pictures of Micah and Abner acting intimately. In one, their faces were pressed together. I took a sharp drag from my cigarette. My hand shot up, ready to delete the photos, but I stopped myself. I leaned back in the office chair and blew out a heavy cloud of smoke. These photos gave me a much clearer picture of Micah and Abner's relationship in the U.S. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say their relationship was somewhere between lovers and friends. But what did that really mean? It was in the past. Micah had never been with Abner as his girlfriend. If I put myself in her shoes, if Micah were to dwell on my past, I would have even more reason to be ashamed. After all, I had lived with Ava and slept with Chloe. No wonder people always say that love requires compromise and tolerance. Right now, I really needed to have a tolerant heart. Time ticked by as I wrestled with my insecurities. When I came to, Ava's profile icon had gone gray. She must have left the office and gone home to rest. I stubbed out my nearly finished cigarette. Suddenly, I had no desire to sleep. I decided to search for more information online and continue my research on the tourism industry. There was another reason I was staying up. In 3 hours, Micah would be landing in New York. Even if I had to wait until the middle of the night, I wanted to talk to her. Not necessarily about her and Abner. I just wanted to talk. After downing a cup of strong tea to clear my head, I sent Micah a message asking her to get in touch after she landed. Then I waited, buzzing with nervous energy, until 3 in the morning. She didn't message back in the time she'd estimated, which was normal. A flight that long was never going to be precise. I rested my head on the table, my eyes glued to my phone, waiting for that telltale chime, but my consciousness slowly blurred and I drifted off. In that brief sleep, I dreamed of Ava. The dream was chaotic, each fragment disconnected from the last. I moved through a series of shattered images, feeling utterly exhausted. I knew it was a dream and tried to wake myself up, but my mind had lost control of my body. It wasn't until my phone finally rang that I was able to break free. I sat up straight, a wave of relief washing over me as I scrubbed my hands over my face. I grabbed the phone. It was Micah. "I'm in New York," the message read. "You're not still up, are you?" I typed back immediately. "Been waiting for your message. But it's after 3 in the morning over there." I was dozing at my desk for a little bit. "Go to bed. Staying up like that is bad for you." "Okay. You get some rest too? Once you're at your hotel." "I will. Good night." And that was it. I still hadn't said a word about the photos. I realized it was probably just me being overly sensitive, and I shouldn't make a big deal out of it. I shut down my computer, yawned, and went back to my room. I lay down flat on the bed and welcomed a night that didn't feel like night at all. The next day, I didn't wake up until almost noon. With no time for lunch, I got in my car and headed for Santa Fe. There was a lot I needed to get done. Back in town, the first thing I did was call the landlord and pay off the $7,000 I owed in back rent. Signing the renewed lease meant I was committing to at least a year of trying to make this work. After that, I talked with Casey about running the place. We both agreed that we needed to hire a front desk clerk. I wasn't at the inn enough, and the long hours were too much for Casey to handle alone. It was late spring, and the traditional tourist off-season in Santa Fe was ending. Business had picked up slightly. We had a few couples staying with us each night. It was enough to keep the lights on, but it was nowhere near what I hoped for this place. So, after a quick lunch, I went to find Finn at his bar. He was rehearsing with his band. I found a seat and waited, watching them practice. A little while later, Finn finished up and brought over 2 beers, handing one to me as he sat down. I took it from him. "How's business been?" Same old, same old. Enough to stay afloat." I smiled. "I saw that woman in the red dress again the other day." Finn gave me a skeptical look. "Are you messing with me?" "Definitely not. It's the God's honest truth. She didn't come to the bar this time," he said, a note of regret in his voice. "Well, what do you expect? You try to force her into that poker game, truth or dare crap. She didn't want to talk about her past, so of course she's not coming back." Finn nodded. "Good point. Man, one wrong move, and you're screwed forever. You just lost your band a rich patron." Finn's expression turned serious. "I honestly wasn't after her money." "Then what were you after?" "I was curious about her, and if she didn't have a face that would make an angel jealous, would you still be curious?" Finn shook his head. "See? You're shallow at heart." "I guess I am," he admitted. I laughed and clinked my bottle against his. Then my tone shifted. "So, how's it going with signing up businesses for the perfect getaway package?" "I'm working on it, but some of them are pretty wary." "It's normal to be wary. The plan hasn't brought them any actual income yet." "Exactly. People are driven by profit, especially business owners." I accepted his cynical take on it. I paused for a moment before getting serious. "You need to get this wrapped up as soon as you can." "Is it urgent?" "Yeah. Have you ever heard of Go Travel? The biggest independent travel site in the country. What does that have to do with our perfect getaway package?" I nodded. "A friend of mine knows the founder, a guy named Mr. Coleman. We might have a chance to get a featured ad on their site. If that comes through, we won't have much time, so we need to be ready." Finn stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. "Your friend knows the Mr. Coleman? That guy's a giant. I read that GoNext just got a $20 million Series C investment. They're about to solidify their spot at the top of the industry." I nodded again, confirming my friend's connection, but added a qualifier. "But the ad is still just a possibility. Nothing's set in stone yet." Finn nodded. "It's a long shot for a bunch of small-timers like us to get a feature on GoNext unless we pay for it. We can't afford that. That's why I'm saying it's just a possibility." "Well, we'll do our best. Give it our all," Finn said, raising his beer bottle. I tapped my bottle against his. As I took a sip, my mind was already racing, trying to figure out how I was going to handle the meeting with Mr. Coleman next week. If we really could get a featured ad on GoNext, the inn's traffic would explode. The perfect getaway package would get the initial momentum it needed to evolve into a mature, unique business model. It was another night after a long, busy day. I was leaning back in my office chair, trying to relax, when the ping of a notification came from the Facebook Messenger I'd left open. I sat up and looked at the blinking profile picture. It was from Ava. "Leo, the meeting with Mr. Coleman is in 3 days. How are your preparations coming along?" "I'm on it." "Good. Keep it up. I still have a lot of faith in you." "Thanks." After the polite, friendly exchange, another message popped up. "By the way, my dad is going to be there." I instantly tensed up, feeling like a cornered animal. What the hell for? Mr. Coleman's company has always worked with his advertising agency. The main topic of this meeting is GoNext's strategic development plan, so of course he's attending. But he doesn't know you're the one we're meeting with. Are you scared of him? Suddenly, the past I had tried so hard to bury resurfaced. If I had been afraid of him back then because of my relationship with Ava, what reason was there to be afraid now, after all this time? I subconsciously touched the bridge of my nose and finally replied to Ava. At this point, do you really think I have any reason to be afraid of him? To me, he's just some guy I'm about to have a business meeting with. The moment I hit send, I realized how jarring the word some guy looked. If he were anyone else, I should have respectfully called him a senior in the industry. Why did I use those words? I suppose I still resented him, even after all these years. I leaned back in my chair again, staring blankly at the ceiling as those unbearable memories flooded my mind. Ava must have been struck by my choice of words, too. It was a long time before she replied. As long as you can face him with a calm mind, that's all that matters. Right. You're helping me out so much. Nathan won't have a problem with it, will he? Ava's reply was a question of her own. Should he? I was speechless. Her profile picture went dark, showing she had logged off. It was probably for the best. It saved me the trouble of figuring out how to respond. That night, I worked until midnight. As I was getting ready for bed, a text came in from Micah in the States. I bet you're not asleep yet. I bet you haven't had lunch yet. She sent back a smiley face. We're both grinding away for work. Yeah, we are, I replied, feeling it deeply. How's the inn doing lately? I hesitated, then decided to tell her the truth about Ava's help. After everything we'd been through, I hoped there was trust between us. Ava introduced me to Mr. Coleman from GoNext Travel. He might do a feature ad for the inn. After sending the message, I waited anxiously. I had no idea what she was thinking. This time, she didn't reply for a very long time. My unease grew. Not caring about the international charges, I gave up on texting and just called her. The phone rang once before she hung up. She did mind. I tossed the phone aside in frustration, but then it rang again. I snatched it up reflexively. It was Micah calling back. I answered without a second's hesitation. Why'd you hang up on me? Aren't international calls expensive? So what if they are? It's better if I call you. Are you worried I can't afford my phone bill? Let me tell you, that's a completely unnecessary worry. Your boy is living large over here. All right then, Micah said, her voice even. I'll give you a chance to splurge. I'll hang up, you call me back. Don't hang up, don't hang up. Not splurging anymore. I'm always splurging, but we're both busy people. The time it takes to hang up and call back, we could have made a few $100s. Micah laughed, which finally put me at ease. At least she was still in the mood to joke around with me. After a short silence, I cautiously asked, why did it take you so long to reply just now? I was trying to remember who Mr. Coleman is. The name sounded so familiar. I told you he's the founder of GoNext Travel. Yeah, but I couldn't remember what kind of site GoNext is, either. It just felt familiar. Is that really what you were thinking about? Yeah. Half believing her, I asked again, you're not angry at all about Ava helping me? Micah was silent. I sighed internally. You do mind, don't you? It was a long time before Micah finally replied. I know things are tough with the inn right now, and you can't support all by yourself. Ava works in advertising, and in your circle of friends, she's the only one who can help with ad resources. I'm just going to assume you're doing this for the inn, with no ulterior motives. I promise, no ulterior motives. Micah laughed softly. That puts my mind at ease. Okay, I'm not going to keep you. This is an international call, after all, and I'm not as rich as you are. Her teasing finally made me feel better. It made me even more determined to get the inn off the ground, to not let her understanding go to waste. 2 days passed. Tomorrow was the day I was scheduled to meet with Mr. Coleman. That evening, I drove back to Portland. I needed to meet with Ava first, and then she would take me to Seattle. Back in Portland, I booked a table at a restaurant near Ava's office and called Ben and Jenna to invite them to dinner. But the couple had taken advantage of the rare weekend to visit Ben's family. So, once again, it was just me and Ava. Around 8 in the evening, Ava arrived at the restaurant. The waiter promptly brought out the drinks and dishes I'd ordered in advance. I poured Ava a glass of iced tea. She said a polite, thank you, and took it from me. After a small sip, she said, Mr. Coleman has a meeting tomorrow morning, so I scheduled your meeting for noon. We can all have lunch together. Sounds good. Ava nodded and said nothing more. What about Nathan? I asked. He hasn't been in Portland for a while, has he? Ava looked at me and smiled again. He was here 2 days ago. He just went back to Boston yesterday. You two just haven't been in touch. That's why you think that. It took me a moment to process. Yeah, you're right, I finally said. Ava started eating, and I followed suit. We were doing the same thing, but a thick wall of silence divided us. A little while later, Ava finally put down her chopsticks. You and Micah sorted out your issues from a while back, right? I nodded, my chopsticks still moving. When are you planning on getting married? I froze. That was a question that just shouldn't come from her lips, especially since I had never once tried to find out about her and Nathan's wedding plans. I looked at Ava, searching for a sense of calm before I spoke. We don't have any plans to get married just yet, but I'm sure we will. What about you? When are you and Nathan getting married? Ava returned my gaze with a calm smile. My ad agency is still in its growth phase, and his family's business needs to expand, so we're not thinking about marriage for now either. I nodded and said with a self-deprecating laugh, we're all putting marriage on hold for our careers. But compared to you two, my career doesn't even count as a career. No matter how small, a business is still a business. I believe that if you're willing to fight for it, you'll one day stand at the peak of the business world, looking down on everyone who ever looked down on you. I looked at Ava again. From the tone of her voice, I could hear how much she despised the people who had once scorned me, a hatred that seemed to surpass even my own. But did I really have a chance to stand at the very top of the business world? Ava met my gaze. You're not saying anything. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about when I'll ever be able to stand at that peak you mentioned. The road is long and winding, but I will seek it from top to bottom, she quoted. I gave a solemn nod at her encouragement. Since I had set a goal for myself, I had to keep exploring and striving, sweating through the effort. That night, Ava seemed to have good appetite. She ate 2 small bowls of rice, while I had only managed one. She ladled a bowl of vegetable soup for me. Leo, don't you have an appetite? No, you just have a great one. I've been working hard lately. A good appetite means a healthy body. Her positive attitude made me smile. Besides the Keystone Properties account, have you landed any other big ad orders recently? I used the entire 50% advance from Keystone to open up advertising channels, mostly large outdoor billboards. So we've gotten quite a few orders from real estate and car dealerships lately. Well, congratulations. It's too early for congratulations. I think it's perfect timing. Ava put down her bowl and chopsticks again. Wait until Aura Creative is more famous in the industry than Jian Boyu's ad agency. Then you can congratulate me. I laughed. You just call your dad by his full name? What's so surprising? I've been doing it for years. Of course, when I'm in a good mood, I'll still call him Dad. Ava's independent streak didn't bother me. On the contrary, it pained me a little because that was the same personality that had once caused her to turn her world upside down for me, fighting with her parents. After dinner, Ava and I blended into the crowd on the street, walking to digest our full stomachs. In reality, it had been years since we had walked side by side, so leisurely. The cool spring air felt like a comforting blanket around us, but we could no longer find the feeling we had when we were together. I was no longer willing to just go with the flow, and she was no longer willing to find that carefree joy in my complacency. When we got tired, we sat down on the curb. I habitually pulled a cigarette from the pack and lit it. Ava gently massaged her legs to ease the fatigue. After a moment, she asked, "You're meeting Jian Boyu and Uncle Coleman tomorrow. Are you nervous?" I smiled. You make it sound like I'm going into a fight to the death. Tomorrow, you really do have to bring that kind of fight. Those two are old pros. If you don't have that kind of fire, you won't be able to handle them. You're a real boss, you know that. Ava looked at me, her expression serious. Leo, I'm not joking. As a man, you have to have the resolve to fear mediocrity more than you fear fight. All right, tomorrow, even if I can't be a hero, I'll at least be a man. Ava patted my shoulder. That's the spirit. I like it. Ava blinked. You were just calling me a boss, weren't you? Is there a problem with me referring to myself like that? There is. You're several months younger than me. Boss status is determined by rank in the world, not age. Don't bring that up as evidence. As she argued with me, I subconsciously reached out, put my hand on her head, and messed up her hair until her neat, professional bob was a complete wreck. Ava looked up at me, her eyes flashing with indignation. I felt a pang of panic. My actions had crossed a line, but this was how we used to joke around. I realized then that if I spent too much time alone with Ava, I would easily confuse the past with the present. The memories of the past were still flowing through my veins. I was silent for a long time before I said, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have messed up your hair like that. Don't do it again." I know. Ava looked at me, her eyes a little moist, but she smiled. Actually, it's not a big deal that it's messy. It's just that you can't comb it back for me like you used to. I understood. This was Ava's way of reminding me to face her current relationship, but it made me feel a little sad. I couldn't quite put my finger on why, but sometimes a person's thoughts are just that subtle and beyond their own control. That night, I didn't stay with Ava for too long. I didn't want to get trapped in a vortex of memories, and I didn't want the promise I made to Micah to become an irresponsible lie. Back at the old apartment, I quickly washed up and lay down on the bed, replaying my conversation with Ava. As a man, you have to fear mediocrity more than you fear a fight. Coming from a woman, that line was incredibly forceful, but it wasn't wrong. For years, that was exactly the kind of fire I had lacked. That was why, years ago, I had never stood before Ava's father with that kind of fire and promised him anything. From the very beginning, I had failed to leave a good impression on that business titan. Back then, I thought that just going with the flow was good enough. Why make myself so tired and stressed in this short life? Even though I had tried to work hard after she went to the States, when she broke up with me, all my motivation crumbled in an instant, and I started down a path of self-destruction. I understood more deeply now that fire had always been missing from my bones. That's why my past self had been so easy to break. And now, I really was afraid of being mediocre. I would never forget the way Milan had lorded her wealth over me. I remembered standing alone in a corner at Declan's birthday party, ignored by everyone. And I remembered the expectations of the warden, my mom, Micah, Chloe, and even Ava. As I thought about it, I turned off the light and lit a cigarette in the darkness, hoping that after I finished it, I would be reborn from the ashes, and in that rebirth, I would finally enjoy the feeling of being in control. Just as I was reflecting on the past and present, I received another text from Micah. She was also concerned about the outcome of my meeting with Mr. Coleman. I quickly replied, "We're scheduled to meet at noon. We'll have lunch together. The feature ad is tempting, but don't put too much pressure on yourself. Just face it with a calm heart, win or lose." A calm heart? Are you kidding? I'm going in with a do-or-die attitude. I have to make this happen, no matter what. That doesn't sound like you. What's gotten into you? I'm not afraid of a fight. I'm afraid of being ordinary. The moment I sent that fearless message to Micah, she called me back. It caught me off guard. Ever since she'd gone to the States, we'd had an unspoken agreement. No direct calls unless it was something really important. I answered the phone, but didn't say anything, waiting to hear what she had to say. "Leo, why are you suddenly so aggressive?" "This is a tough phase," I said, the words tumbling out. "I need this aggression to break through the ice in front of me. The business world changes in a flash. Too much aggression can make you lose sight of the big picture. That's not good for a boss's growth." I laughed. "From the heights you're at, of course the big picture is important. You're not just facing fierce market competition, but also internal conflicts within your company. All I'm managing right now is an inn. My environment isn't as complex as yours. My biggest enemy is myself. I desperately need this aggression to maintain an edge over him." Micah was quiet for a moment before saying, "Maybe I'm overthinking it. Is that why you called? To remind me of this?" "Not entirely. I also wanted to hear your voice." I froze. I realized I hadn't been in much contact with Micah for the past 2 days. I'd practically ignored her. I asked myself if this neglect was also related to my overwhelming desire for success. I couldn't say for sure, but these last few days have been incredibly busy, with almost no free time. All my energy had been focused on preparing for the meeting with Mr. Coleman. But wasn't Micah busy too? "Why aren't you talking?" I snapped back to reality and said apologetically, "I was just thinking about how busy I've been. I haven't spoken to you in 2 days." Micah didn't hold it against me. She laughed and changed the subject. "Sing me a song." "What song?" "I've got little horns on my head. I've got a tail behind me. Nobody knows how many secrets I have." "There, I've started it for you. You take it from here." I smiled helplessly. It was that ridiculously poppy boy band song that had once made me cringe. Micah asking me to sing it now was probably her little way of punishing me. She was a smart woman, always giving me a way to save face while still giving me a reminder. I pinched my throat and sang in a childish voice. Micah listened and laughed. After I finished, she said, "Thank you for singing that for me. I feel much more relaxed. I'll be in a better state for work this afternoon." And here I thought you were using a kid's song to punish me for not contacting you for 2 days. You're overthinking it, aren't you? It's because you were so mischievous before. You put me through so much. That's why I have this conditioned response. I was halfway through my sentence when I faintly heard her assistant in the background, reminding her to attend a business meeting. Micah replied to her assistant, then hurriedly said to me, "Leo, I have a meeting to get to. I'll talk to you tonight." "Okay." But just before she hung up, Micah managed to hum a few more lines of the song, which left me both amused and exasperated. She wasn't as distant as she seemed. Sometimes, she was very lively and had a childlike innocence. After the call, I put my phone aside, savoring the sound of her voice before she hung up. For a moment, I forgot about the pressure I would face tomorrow. I suddenly realized that maybe this was Micah's real purpose in asking me to sing the song, not the punishment I had imagined. The night was still young. I sat up in bed again, staring out the window, lost in thought. It took me a while to notice how many stars were twinkling in the sky tonight. I lit a cigarette and took a few long drags before I thought to search for that city in the sky among the bright stars. I quickly gave up. I knew that city was drifting further and further away from me now. But whether it was I who had gotten lost or the city that had drifted away, I had no idea. I stubbed out the cigarette. In a last wisp of smoke, I saw the beautiful woman with long, flowing hair. I stared at her, not too close and not too far, and asked myself, was this a consolation prize or a gift before that city disappeared for good? There was no more complicated question in my life than this one. I had to think about it, really think about it. The next morning, I woke up early. After washing up, I drove to the breakfast diner where I had arranged to meet Ava. I went in, ordered breakfast, and about 5 minutes later, Ava arrived right on time. She sat down across from me. I pushed a basket of steamed dumplings toward her. She politely thanked me and asked, "So, how are you feeling now? Ready for anything?" "Feeling pretty calm." Ava smiled. "That's good." I nodded and picked up my chopsticks to eat. But my heart wasn't as calm as I claimed. In reality, I was resistant to meeting Mr. Bell, but Ava had already given me a reason why he had to be there. I had no way to refuse. I could only hope that when we met at noon, I would be able to consciously treat him as just a business associate and not remember the rejection he had once dealt me from his high horse. Ava's appetite didn't seem as good as it was last night. She only ate one dumpling and drank a glass of soy milk before she was done. Not wanting to keep her waiting, I sped up my eating. "Leo, our meeting isn't until 11:30. Slow down, there's no rush. Then you should eat a little more too. It's still a few hours until noon. I don't have much of an appetite." "What's wrong?" "I lose my appetite just thinking about seeing Jian-boy." I smiled. "You're kidding, right?" "Who's kidding? I haven't been back to Seattle in over a month." I tried to probe with a joking tone. "Honestly, I can't stand your dad either, but is there any need for you to be on my side against him now?" "That's not the right way to put it. The reason I don't want to see him is because he forced a life on me that I didn't want ever since I was little." Ava's explanation was flawless. I nodded and stopped thinking about it. A little while later, I finished my breakfast. Since we had plenty of time, we didn't leave the diner right away, but took a break. I checked the time. It was just past 8 in the morning. Micah, in New York, should be done with work by now. I mischievously sent her a WhatsApp message, about to head to Seattle, suddenly really nervous. "Quick, sing me a song to help me relax." A moment after I sent the message, Micah replied with a voice note. She sang the theme from the Smurfs, another song deeply ingrained in our childhood memories. She had a knack for singing kids' songs. No matter how hard you tried, you couldn't find a flaw in her childish tone. It was probably because of her naturally clear voice. A smoker like me couldn't pull it off at all. I was listening and laughing when Ava, beside me, asked curiously, "Who's singing that?" "Micah." "Oh, is this some little game you two have?" I looked up at Ava and, after a moment, nodded. Ava didn't say anything more. She glanced at her watch and said, "Let's head to Seattle early. It's fine for us to wait for them, but we can't have them waiting for us." I nodded, paid the bill, and left the diner with Ava. We didn't drive fast, but even so, we arrived in Seattle at just 10 o'clock, an hour and a half before the scheduled meeting. Ava booked a room for me by the hour to rest, while she went home, saying she hadn't seen her mom in a long time and wanted to use the opportunity. After she left, I was alone in the hotel room. I got a text from Finn telling me that quite a few more businesses were willing to join our perfect getaway package. I immediately texted back, "Did you promise them something?" "I just mentioned there might be a feature ad for the plan." Of course, I didn't make any promises right now. Finn's reply put me slightly at ease. In reality, my sensitivity was a sign of my lack of confidence. This lack of confidence wasn't because I was afraid to face Mr. Coleman, but because of Mr. Bell. In his eyes, I had once been completely worthless. An hour passed quickly. I left the hotel and drove to the designated restaurant. When I arrived, I parked in the open-air lot across the street. Just as I was about to open my door, a black Mercedes S350 pulled into the lot, followed closely by Ava's Cadillac CTS. I took a deep breath, opened the door, and stood waiting in the noon sun. Ava got out of her car first and came over to me. "The ones in that car are Jian-boy and Uncle Coleman," she said softly. I nodded to show I understood. The Mercedes driver parked the car, quickly got out to open both rear doors, and 2 middle-aged men stepped out. One was Jian-boy, whom I recognized. The other must be Mr. Coleman. Ava straightened my slightly wrinkled suit jacket and gave me an encouraging look, signaling for me to go over and say hello first. I looked at Mr. Bell. 3 years seemed to have left no trace on his face. Though he was over 50, he looked like he was in his early 40s. His Italian-style short hair and business suit only accentuated the sharpness honed in the business world. It seemed Ava really hadn't told her father who he was meeting. When he saw me, his expression was a mixture of surprise and an unreadable storm of emotions. I forced myself to call him Mr. Bell, but I couldn't forget the past. I just stood there, frozen. Finally, Ava spoke up. She looked at me, then at her father. Mr. Bell, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Liu Zhao. The Shatter Your Life, promotional theme for your protégé's company, Keystone Properties, was his idea. This seemed to be the off-ramp Ava had created for us. I stood on it and said to Mr. Bell, a pleasure, Mr. Bell. Mr. Bell just nodded and shot Ava a reproachful look, clearly unhappy with this arrangement. I then greeted Mr. Coleman. He seemed unaware of the history between us and extended his hand warmly. I've heard about that Shatter Your Life theme. It's just a concept, but it's a classic example of breaking conventional thinking. I heard you actually shattered a glass in front of the client to demonstrate the theme. I nodded, confirming it. Mr. Coleman gave me a thumbs up. That kind of grit is rare, even among young people. I hope you can give me a surprise this time. Before I could speak, Ava interjected, Uncle Coleman, I'm sure Leo is prepared. Let's wait and see. Mr. Coleman smiled and nodded. Ava looked at Mr. Bell. Mr. Bell, you're so quiet. What's the meaning of this? The development bottleneck at Go-Next Travel has been a problem for you for a long time. Aren't you the least bit expectant? This pointed question made Mr. Bell visibly uncomfortable. After a long moment, he said to Ava, If I wasn't expectant, I wouldn't have come. Let's go inside and talk. Inside the private room, we sat around the dining table. For ease of communication, I sat next to Mr. Coleman. We dispensed with small talk and got straight to business. He said to me, Tell me your thoughts on Go-Next Travel. I nodded. Go-Next Travel is the largest independent travel website in China, but its advantages over its competitors aren't obvious. I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's the biggest motivation for you, Mr. Coleman, to desperately want to break through this development bottleneck. Mr. Coleman nodded. You're right. The constant catching up from our competitors has given us a great sense of crisis. Please continue. I'd like to talk about Go-Next Travel's current situation in the larger context. Right now, the website is positioned as just an information platform. Because it doesn't have its own production capacity, its function is very singular. This is the biggest knot in the bottleneck. I paused for a moment and continued. The website's main functions, besides publishing travel information, are helping major tourist attractions sell tickets offline. Because it has no production capacity of its own, it's hard to challenge the producer's price systems, so it's often in a passive position. To put it bluntly, it's just a sales channel for travel producers, with no core competency of its own. My words were merciless, essentially negating Go-Next Travel's entire current business model. Mr. Coleman's face darkened, and Ava looked at me with a nervous expression, as if complaining that I'd said all this without enough preamble. The oppressive atmosphere didn't cause me much psychological burden. I just waited unflustered. Mr. Coleman tapped his fingers rhythmically on the table. After a long moment, he nodded. Although I'm reluctant to admit it, the problems you've mentioned do exist, and we must face them. Continue. I'm all ears. His acknowledgement finally let Ava breathe a sigh of relief. From start to finish, I hadn't felt a shred of nervousness. A leader who can't accept different opinions is an unqualified one. If Mr. Coleman didn't have that much class, he never could have built Go-Next Travel into the nation's largest independent travel site. I organized my thoughts. We can define Go-Next Travel as a B2C business website. In the current market, e-commerce platforms are indeed the new darlings of the retail industry, but their poor user experience and difficulty in guaranteeing transaction security are inherent flaws that can't be ignored. Of course, traditional retail has its own flaws, too. So both e-commerce and traditional retailers are trying to avoid their own weaknesses and penetrate each other's domains. This has given rise to an O2O, or online to offline, sales model. I believe Go-Next Travel must be a pioneer in this O2O model. So, in addition to being a traditional offline travel site, we also need our own production capacity, transitioning the site towards multifunctionality to form a true core competency. Mr. Coleman stroked his chin, thinking for a long time. I'd like to hear more specifics about this so-called production capacity. I got straight to the point. So-called production capacity means using the travel site as a core to vigorously develop derivative products and create our own real-world businesses. For example, producing related travel gear, opening online travel supply stores, and developing our own hotels in scenic areas. Let the online and offline models penetrate each other, ultimately forming a complete tourism ecosystem within our own system. Mr. Coleman looked at me, astonished, but didn't rush to respond. It was then that I finally felt a twinge of nervousness. My argument was based purely on personal judgment, with no hard data to back it up. But then again, if it were based on existing data, it wouldn't be innovation. After coming up with an idea, the real test is often the leader's decision-making power. Finally, Mr. Coleman spoke. You've certainly provided a new direction for development. But have you thought about how much funding would be needed to follow this path? GoNext Travel has gone through 3 rounds of financing to get where it is today. The most recent one was only a $20 million investment. I smiled. With your reputation in the industry, as long as you have the confidence to do this, financing isn't a major problem. Of course, for the sake of stability, you could also execute this idea more conservatively. How so? For example, the project of opening hotels in scenic areas could be piloted on a small scale to test the feasibility of the idea. Mr. Coleman looked at me and laughed. You're a very thorough young man. I suspect guiding me towards opening a hotel in a scenic area was your real goal, wasn't it? I glanced at Ava. Had she already told him I was running an inn? She gave me a look that said she had. I let out a soft breath to relax. Uncle Coleman, I admit I did open an inn just outside the scenic area in Santa Fe, but I wouldn't dare hope to become a pilot hotel for GoNext. This inn has too many inherent flaws. My real purpose was just to hopefully get a feature ad on your website. Mr. Coleman asked, intrigued, tell me, what kind of feature ad do you hope to get on our site? I immediately told him about the perfect getaway package I had been preparing. Mr. Coleman smiled. In essence, this package of yours is just a modified form of joint marketing. It caters to the needs of some tourists, but on the other hand, it has an element of bundle selling. Are you aware of that? I nodded. The problem you mentioned does exist, but the biggest advantage for small businesses like ours is flexibility and mobility. We have ample room to transform this kind of bundle selling into word-of-mouth sales. After I finished, Mr. Coleman praised me. You're a young man who clearly understands the pros and cons of your business and knows how to use your strengths to avoid your weaknesses. This time, I'm choosing to trust my judgment and give you a chance. He paused for a moment. I also hope you can use this opportunity to turn around the weaknesses in your inn's operation. If you can deliver an outstanding report card, it's not impossible for you to become a pilot hotel for GoNext in the future. Ava instinctively leaned forward. Uncle Coleman, does this mean you agree to help Leo's Inn with a feature ad on your website? Mr. Coleman nodded with a serious expression. Ava probed further. I have to state up front, he doesn't have the money to pay your advertising fees. Mr. Coleman looked at me. If he really had the money to pay, he wouldn't have needed to go to Santa Fe to open an inn. I'll consider this ad my reward to him. What he said today was very helpful to me. Whether I end up using it or not is another matter, but at least it provides a viable path for GoNext's future development. With Mr. Coleman's promise, Ava was thrilled. She immediately clapped and said, "A pleasure doing business with you." I finally let out a sigh of relief, stood up, and shook Mr. Coleman's hand. As I was about to sit down, Ava stood up, grabbed my sleeve, and said, "Leo, right now, in front of Jianboyu, tell him that you will definitely turn this into a nationally renowned chain of scenic inns." I was caught completely off guard, and Mr. Bell was even more so. We both stared at Ava with the same look, but we both knew exactly why she was making this demand. I knew that with Mr. Coleman present, it wasn't appropriate to make any declarations in front of Mr. Bell. But thinking of the past, a wave of intense pressure built up inside me. Finally, I smiled at Mr. Bell and said, "I'm personally very grateful to Ava for introducing me to Uncle Coleman, giving mine the chance to get advertising resources from GoNext. So, to not let her down, I will definitely run this in well. The goal is a nationally renowned chain of scenic inns." Mr. Bell's face turned extremely ugly. In the end, he didn't lash out, but just said to me, "Don't get arrogant, kid." Ava smiled meaningfully and followed up, "Mr. Bell, so you admit he has talent now?" Mr. Bell's face darkened even more. Perhaps because Mr. Coleman was there, he still held his temper in check. "Ava, don't be so willful. And don't bring personal emotions into a business setting like this." Ava continued to look at her father with a complicated expression. Mr. Coleman finally seemed to realize something was up. He stepped in to mediate. "Old Jian, don't you have a meeting this afternoon? You should probably get going, don't be late." Mr. Bell nodded, avoiding Ava's pressing gaze, picked up his briefcase, and walked out the door. Ava's eyes followed her father's retreating back until he disappeared completely. Only then did she sink back in her chair, lost in thought for a long time. Finally, she forced a smile and said to me and Mr. Coleman, Uncle Coleman, Leo, let's keep eating. Seeing her forced cheerfulness, I felt an inexplicable ache in my chest. But I couldn't express it, nor could I comfort her. I just picked up my chopsticks and continued eating. After lunch, since Mr. Bell had left early, Mr. Coleman, who had come with him, was left without a ride. This gave me the opportunity to drive him to the airport. I was behind the wheel of the VW. CC Micah had left me, driving on the highway to the airport. I focused on the road while Mr. Coleman rested in the back seat with his eyes closed. It wasn't until we were almost there that he spoke. Young man, you and Ava are not just ordinary friends, are you? His question surprised me, but I answered honestly. We used to be together. Mr. Coleman had an I knew it expression on his face. He sighed. The candle burns down, but the person remains unaware. Alas, old Jin's biggest mistake in life was having a daughter with a spirit of fire, but then refusing to give that fire any oxygen to burn. It was another observation from bystander, but I didn't want to dwell on its meaning. Some things, some people, some feelings. They were already scattered. After dropping off Mr. Coleman, I returned to Portland. I had two goals. One, to water the plants in the old apartment, and two, to treat Ava to dinner on behalf of the inn. After all, she had done us a huge favor. I went back to the old apartment first and watered the plants. Then I called Ava to invite her to dinner. To avoid being alone with her, I also called Ben and Jenna, inviting them to join us. This time, they were finally free and promised they would come. That evening, I went to the restaurant and booked a private room. A little while later, Ben and Jenna arrived on time. We chatted while waiting for Ava, who was still tied up at her office. After several cups of tea, Ava still hadn't shown up. Ben and I went to the restroom together. After we were done, the two of us, craving a smoke, stood outside the restroom and lit up. Halfway through his cigarette, Ben flicked the ash off. So, you specifically invited Ava to dinner and dragged me and Jenna along. What's this really about? I leaned against the wall, took a deep drag, and exhaled heavily. She did me a huge favor this time. Isn't it only right to treat her to dinner? Ben smiled. But you didn't want to treat her alone, so you dragged us along? Yeah, it's best to avoid any potential misunderstandings. Between her and me now, everything is open and transparent. Ben's reply was unexpected. Being too deliberate can have the opposite effect. I frowned. What do you mean? Some feelings might be blurry, but they're just blurry, not gone. Don't talk that kind of confusing crap. Is it confusing crap? I'm just reminding you. You and Ava are like two people trapped in an abyss, unable to be saved. Where do you get that from? I shot back contemptuously. No matter how deep you hide your thoughts, time, that merciless machine, will eventually dig them out. That's true for you, for me, and for Ava. Everyone has secrets. Ben took a heavy drag from his cigarette. His words felt wrong, but I didn't want to figure out why. So I fell silent. Ben and I finished our cigarettes at almost the same time. I stubbed mine out first and signaled for him to go. But Ben seemed to remember something. All right, there's something I have to tell you. What is it? Just as he was about to speak, a look of conflict crossed his face. This only made me more eager to know. Well, say it. Ben lit another cigarette before he spoke. I heard that Abner went to the States yesterday. I replied instinctively. Isn't it normal for him to go to the States? Is it really normal at a time like this? My heart sank. After a moment, I asked Ben, how do you know about Abner? He's one of the investors behind Aria Grande. Of course I know him. I looked at him confused. Even if he's an investor, his whereabouts aren't something just anyone would know, right? Ben was silent for a long moment. Milan told me. He went to the States this time, not just to help with Aria Grande's IPO, but also, he didn't finish, but what he meant was obvious. After all, Abner had pursued Micah for years. How could he give up so easily? And Micah, because of their years of friendship, had never kept her distance from him. But did I really need to be on edge? I thought that after everything we'd been through, I could be a man who knew how to act in a relationship and give Micah enough trust. I shifted my focus back to Ben. She even talks to you about things like that? You two are getting pretty close. Ben's expression became a little unnatural. We're just friends, he finally said. I hope you never let down a devoted wife like Jenna. I won't. I nodded and didn't say any more. I didn't ask any more questions. Everyone has secrets, and one day, time will dig them all out. Whether they are good or evil, the verdict will come. After we finished our second cigarettes, Ben and I finally returned to the private room. At almost the same time, Ava walked over from another corner, bag in hand. After saying hello, the three of us went into the room together. Inside, Jenna was playing on her phone, looking bored. When she saw us return, she complained, "What took you two so long?" I smiled. "Had a couple of smokes. You two addicts." This time, Ben and I laughed together. Ava put down her handbag, took the menu from the waiter, and started ordering. A little while later, the food arrived. To our surprise, there were also a dozen bottles of beer. Jenna said to Ava, "Why did you order so much beer?" "We all drove here. Don't worry. The restaurant has designated drivers." "I'm happy today. I just want to drink." Ben and Jenna exchanged a look of confusion. But Ava had already poured each of us a glass of beer. She raised her glass to Ben and Jenna. "Did you know? Today, Leo met the CEO of Go Next Travel. His insights were so good, so unique. Uncle Coleman even sent me a message praising him after he left. I knew he wouldn't let me down." After she finished, she drained her entire glass of beer in one go. The coldness of the first glass must have been a shock, because she choked, coughing while covering her mouth, but her face was still beaming. The scene filled me with mixed emotions. I didn't say a word. I just picked up my glass and downed it too. Seeing that Ava and I had both finished our beers, Ben and Jenna followed suit. Ava immediately refilled all the empty glasses. She raised her glass. "I'm happy today, so you all have to drink with me until we've had our fill. You hear?" she declared, then downed her second glass and reached for the bottle again. Jenna placed a hand on Ava's. "Ava, we know you're happy, but you don't have to rely on alcohol to celebrate, right? We could go sing karaoke or go shopping." Ava just glanced at Jenna out of the corner of her eye, removed her hand, and stubbornly poured herself another glass. I grew even more confused. Was she really drinking this much just because she was happy about what happened today? Or was there something else weighing on her heart, something she had to release in this way? Just as Ava was about to drink her third glass, Jenna filled her own glass to the brim. "Since you want to drink so much, I'll drink with you," she said with a smile. Ben tried to stop her. "You should drink less." Jenna ignored him, raised her full glass, and tilted her head back, finishing it in one gulp. Ava, as if she had found a kindred spirit, immediately refilled both their glasses, completely ignoring me and Ben. This display made us wary of drinking too much. We could already see they were going to get drunk, and it was our responsibility to make sure they got home safely. Sure enough, they got wasted. Ben carried Jenna out of the restaurant on his back. Ava's tolerance was slightly better, so I just supported her as she walked, a little conscious but unsteady. The designated driver was already waiting in the car. Ben and I looked at each other, a shared look of astonishment in our eyes. Time truly was a merciless, cold machine, changing everything in the world with its unstoppable force. A few years ago, it had been Jenna and Ava taking care of a drunk Ben and me. Now, for reasons unknown, we had completely swapped roles. As I was sighing internally, a half-drunk Ava waved goodbye to Ben and his wife. Ben gave me a helpless smile, then helped Jenna into their car. I guided Ava into her Cadillac, buckled her seatbelt, and sat down in the passenger seat. I signaled for the driver to go. The driver glanced at Ava, sitting alone in the back through the rearview mirror, a look of confusion on his face. He probably thought we were a couple, yet here we were, maintaining a friends-only distance. Ava still lived in that apartment complex near the Willamette River. Just as we were about to arrive, she insisted the driver drop us off at the riverbank. She stumbled towards the water, and I followed closely, afraid she would fall on the sloped bank. I helped her to a flat patch of grass, where she suddenly pulled away from me, spread her arms wide, and flopped on her back. "The wind feels so nice," she mumbled. Seeing her sprawled out like that, I couldn't help but laugh. I nudged her. "It's damp by the river. Lie here for a bit, then you need to go home and rest." She ignored me and held up two long, slender fingers, her index and middle. "Are you asking me for a cigarette?" I asked, unsure. "Yeah, give me a smoke." "No, you don't even smoke." My refusal was met with a sharp pinch to my side. The pain made me wince. "Look at yourself. What a mess you are when you're drunk." She didn't let go, her fingers digging in harder. "What right do you have to lecture me? You're always like this when you get drunk." "I'm a guy," I said through the pain. "If I drink too much, I can just unzip my pants and take a leak on the side of the road." "Can you do that?" "Why can't I? Stop messing around. You're really drunk." Her hand was still clamped on me, her voice choked with sobs. Sometimes, when you love someone so much, you just want to become them. You want to drink like them, smoke like them, lie down like them. I was certain I was sober. I hadn't misheard her, but I wasn't sure if she had misspoken. I just stood there, stunned, replaying her words over and over in my head until my phone buzzed. I didn't take it out of my pocket right away. I looked at Ava beside me. She had been numbed by the alcohol and had fallen into a deep sleep. She was no longer lying flat with her arms spread out. She was curled up like a cat seeking warmth, her hands on her chest, her breathing even. I took off my jacket and draped it over her. Only then did I pull on my phone. The message was from Micah. Leo, the sunshine here this morning is so beautiful. How is it over there? I looked up at the sky. It was pitch black, without a single star. The air was thick with moisture. But I still sent her back a message. The moonlight here is pretty nice too. Micah replied almost instantly. Quick, take a picture and show me. I had said the moonlight was nice only to give her a beautiful image to imagine, but she wasn't willing to be a part of my beautiful lie. I walked over to the railing by the river, picked up a stone, and tossed it into the water. The reflections of the streetlights shattered into a million pieces. I took out my phone, captured the image, and sent it to Micah. Why did you take a picture of the moon reflected on the river? And it's not even whole. I wanted to tell her, if it were whole, it wouldn't be the moon, it would be the reflection of a streetlight. But I still wanted to protect that beautiful illusion. I replied, the wind is a bit strong, so the river is choppy. The moon is choppy along with it. You sound like you're talking in riddles. Not all. I did exactly what you asked. It's just that the wind was a bit strong, so the picture turned out to be of a broken moon. This time, it took Micah a long time to reply, and she had changed the subject. Did you remember to water the plants in the apartment? I'll go water them as soon as I get back. Micah sent back a smiley face. By the way, what was the result of your meeting with Mr. Coleman today? He agreed to let my inn have a feature ad on his website. That's great, I smiled and replied. Today's a good day. We both have people helping us out. I heard Abner also went to the States to help you with the IPO. After sending the message, I put my phone back in my pocket. I went back to Ava and gently shook her, but she was fast asleep. Unable to wake her, I had no choice but to pick her up from the grass and carry her towards the riverbank. The sound of notification chimed again, but with my hands full, I couldn't check it right away. I carried Ava through the night, heading toward her apartment complex. I was genuinely grateful that she told me her address while she was still conscious. Otherwise, I'd have no idea what to do with her. When I got to her building, I discovered it was a 6-story walk-up. No elevator. I was about to collapse. I had to lean her against the wall in the entryway, my arms already aching and numb. After a short rest, I picked her up again and started climbing the stairs. A few steps up, I remembered I hadn't read Micah's last message. Why hadn't I thought of it when I was resting? I suppose, subconsciously, I didn't really care about Abner's trip to the States, so I wasn't too concerned about what Micah would reply. I fished the key out of Ava's purse, opened the door, and stumbled inside, placing her on the sofa. I finally flicked on the living room lights, poured myself a glass of water, and sank onto the other end of the couch, trying to recover my spent energy. After finishing the water, I pulled out my phone again and opened Micah's message. Yes, he's here. There's a step that requires cooperation from the investors, and his company is now one of Arya Grand's biggest investors. I smiled and replied, why are you explaining it in such detail? Because I was afraid you'd mind. I don't. Micah sent back a sad face emoji with no words. Why are you sad now? You don't care about me at all. That's why you don't mind. I subconsciously wiped the cold sweat from my forehead. So, Micah could also use that typical female logic when it came to love. Just as I was trying to figure out what to say to quell her insecurity, Ava's phone started ringing from inside her purse. I wasn't going to answer it for her. I continued trying to compose a message to Micah, but the ringing was relentless. I was worried it might be an urgent work call. Finally, I got up, grabbed the purse from the other sofa, and, after rummaging through several pockets, I found the phone. The moment I saw the caller ID, I froze. It was Nathan. I hesitated. Should I answer? There was no good reason to. It was late, Ava was drunk, and I was with her. It was a recipe for a major misunderstanding. The phone rang several more times before finally stopping, but I didn't feel any sense of relief. Just as I was about to put the phone back, a text notification chimed. I glanced at the screen. It was also from Nathan. Ava, can you please answer my call? Please don't be so cold to me. I'm on my way to Portland now. I'll be at your place in 10 minutes. I hope you'll open the door for me. We need to talk, okay? I stood there, stunned, for a full 30 seconds. I suddenly realized I had only 9 minutes and 30 seconds to get out of there. I quickly shoved the phone back into Ava's purse and walked out the door without looking back. Under the cover of night, I found myself back at the riverbank. I had never felt so ridiculous in my life. Why did I have to flee from Ava's apartment in such a panic? Was it because I was with Micah now, or because Ava was with Nathan? Maybe it was neither. Maybe it was just that the carefree days of the past had been slowly poisoned to death by time. I lit a cigarette, my chest tight with pressure. I remembered I still hadn't replied to Micah, but I was so torn between these two feelings that I had no energy to craft a message. I really did just toss my phone aside and sat there numb. Suddenly, Nathan's text to Ava popped into my head. I didn't have to think hard to know that they were having problems again, and that Ava was giving him the cold shoulder. I wasn't a fool. Connecting Ava's recent words and actions, I became deeply aware that there might still be something unresolved between us. But there were so many things that didn't make sense. If Ava still loved me, why did she accept Nathan's proposal at Ben and Jenna's wedding? Why was she so determined to break up with me back in the States, without even giving me a reason? Trapped by these two questions, my brain shut down. Then I thought of Micah. If I kept trying to dig up answers to my unresolved questions with Ava, wasn't that a form of disrespect to her? At that thought, my brain shut down again. But one thing was certain. My previous belief that I no longer loved Ava was based on the assumption that she no longer loved me. Now that I sensed she might still have feelings for me, the heart that hadn't completely died seemed to spark back to life. Because a heart that has truly been given can't just be taken back. 3 years of unforgettable love, followed by 3 years of longing, day and night. If those 6 years were a poison, I truly had no way to cure myself. I was lost. I didn't know what to do. All I could do was drift, a man in the wind, in the rain, in a life that was absurd and yet filled with a love that was to die for. I returned to the old apartment Micah had left me. My body found the comfort of home, but my soul felt as if it were being whipped by Micah with a whip of purity. I finally felt I couldn't stay there any longer. After watering the plants on the balcony, I hurried out and called Robin. At a time like this, I always wanted to talk to my brother-in-arms, who was in the same boat. Robin told me he had moved back into that shabby rooftop room. That was better. At least I wouldn't have to face CC, Micah's closest friend. A little while later, I arrived at Robin's place. I didn't knock. I took a bank card from my wallet, slid it into the old lock, and the door popped open. Robin was lying on his bed, smoking, his expression wooden. I kicked the bed. He turned to look at me, then stubbed out his cigarette. "You're pretty damn good. How'd you get in?" I held up the bank card. Robin said nothing more, just tossed me a cigarette. I didn't smoke it. I held it in my hand and asked him, "Why are you living here again?" "I miss her," he replied, as if by instinct. "Are you being fair to CC?" I shot back, intentionally provocative. I looked at him with a desperate hope, because his answer might shed some light on the vortex I was trapped in. Robin looked at me. After a long moment, he said, "Even if it's not fair, I still have to miss her. She's in my bones." After a moment, I gritted my teeth and nodded. Robin looked at me warily. "What? You want to stick up for CC?" I shook my head. "Anyone in this world has the right to slap you twice for CC, except me." Robin nodded with a look of understanding. "You're right. You don't have a right." I didn't say anything. I sat down on a chair by the bed and finally lit the cigarette I'd been holding. We smoked in silence. Then my phone rang. It was an overseas call from Micah. I still hadn't replied to her last message. The incessant ringing made the phone in my hand feel like a hot potato. In my heart, I didn't want to lie to Micah, but to maintain this rare peace between us, I had to use lies to keep it up. Robin kicked me. "Well, answer it. The ringing is giving me a headache. You're just oxygen deprived from smoking too much. It has nothing to do with my ringtone. Cut the crap and answer it, or hang up." I stared at Robin, then suddenly handed him the phone. "You answer it for me." "Whose call is it?" "Micah's." Robin took the phone, put it on speaker, and said, "This is Robin." "Robin, why are you answering?" "Where's Leo?" "He's standing right next to me. I want to kick him." What he said was no different from me answering the phone myself. Micah was silent for a moment before asking, "Then why isn't he answering?" "I have something I want to talk to you about." "Let's talk, then you can talk to Leo." "Okay, what did you want to talk to me about?" At that, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. At least it didn't look like I was avoiding Micah. But I was getting more and more curious about what Robin was going to say to her. Robin lit another cigarette, took a deep drag, and said to Micah, "I can't lie to myself anymore. I don't have romantic feelings for CC." On the other end of the line, Micah was either in disbelief or asking in anger. "Say that again." "I don't have romantic feelings for CC. I don't want to lie to myself anymore." Micah fell silent. It was a long time before she replied, "Why are you telling me this instead of telling CC?" "I just want you to tell me, from a woman's perspective, whether I should be honest with CC. I don't want to hurt her. I don't know if you should tell her. But whether you tell her or not, you've already hurt CC. Robin, you're really not a good man." Robin was silent. In his silence, I finally picked up the phone, turned off the speaker, and said to Micah, "Hey, it's Leo." Robin has nothing more to say. Micah was sobbing on the other end. "Leo, CC cares about him so much. He can't do this to her." "Yeah, he's not human," I said, but it felt more like I was cursing myself. "Are you going to be like him? Just treating me as a girlfriend you have to be with because of the pressure of age?" "No." I've never thought of you as a girlfriend I'm with because of pressure. If what you're saying is true, I'll be very happy. But I really feel so sad for CC. Actually, he's a pitiful person too. His pain is no less than CC's, maybe even more. I know. He can't forget his ex-girlfriend. If even you can see it, don't you think CC can see it too? So, but if CC knows, why is she still with him? Because there's a kind of love called a moth to a flame. Maybe CC knew the ending of this love story from the very beginning. Micah was silent. I was silent with her for a long time before I finally said, don't overthink it. Your focus should be on work right now. And so should mine. Okay, you should get some rest. I'm going to have lunch. What are you having? Just something simple. I felt a pang of sympathy for her. You have to take care of yourself over there. You're working so hard, you can't neglect your meals. Lately, I've been thinking about eating the food you make for me when I get back, she said softly. Thinking about that makes work not feel so tiring. Okay, I'll make all your favorites. You said it. I promise. Micah finally sounded a little happier. We chatted for a while longer about life before she remembered she hadn't eaten lunch yet. Just as she was about to hang up, I stopped her. Wait, is there something else? For the first time, I took the initiative to ask about her career. Are you prepared for a do-or-die battle this time? Micah didn't hide anything from me. Yes, this IPO is not just about raising funds for the company's continued development, but also about diluting my uncle's shares in Arya Grand. I've already prepared the funds to acquire his diluted shares through other channels. Even though I was on the phone with her, I subconsciously nodded. Micah's move to take Arya Grand public was a direct strike at Declan's weak spot. The IPO would bring huge benefits to the existing shareholders, so Declan couldn't object. And once it went public, the dilution of the original shareholders' stakes was inevitable. After this operation, if Micah had enough financial backing, she could achieve the goal of completely suppressing Declan. You've got this. You too. I'm looking forward to your being the first stop on your road to success. We're in this together. Now go eat lunch. Micah replied with a solemn, we're in this together, before hanging up. After the call, I finally relaxed my tense nerves and found a reason to free myself. Right now, I shouldn't be focusing too much on my emotions. I should be going all out in my career. I'm sure Ava would want the same. After a quick wash-up, I lay down next to Robin. After a long silence, I said to him, actually, I'm facing a similar problem. I know. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come here. But our situations are different. What's the difference? I never had romantic feelings for CC. But you do for Micah. And Micah's situation is different from CC's. You can't afford to let her down even more than I can't afford to let CC down. I felt a sense of melancholy. In that melancholy, I thought of Micah's past and her sensitivity. If I really did let her down, it would be worse than death for her. Seeing me silent, Robin added, there's another difference. What? Ava might still have feelings for you. My ex is gone without a trace, probably already married. So your situation is a hell of a lot more complicated than mine. After his analysis, I had to admit he was right. I hoped more than anything that I would never have to face that choice. Robin seemed to see through my worries. He comforted me. Don't worry. If your ex was going to make you choose, she would have done it long ago, not waited until today. You just need to pull yourself together and be with Micah. If you dare to hurt a woman like that in the slightest, you won't be able to live with yourself. Thinking of Micah being hurt by me felt like being pierced by 1,000 arrows. I fumbled in my pocket for a cigarette, but the pack was empty. Give me a smoke, I said to Robin. He held up the cigarette he was smoking, showing it was his last one. I took it from his hand, pinched off the part that had been his mouth, took a deep drag, and exhaled heavily. In the swirling smoke, it felt like I could see the future Micah and I had envisioned. She had complete control of Arya Grand, and I, thanks to the success of my inn, had finally made a small name for myself in the business world.